This is the D6 generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
No, cut that. Keep that. Someday it's going to be worth something.
Russ Wakelin.
You put me in an ATST with frickin' Wookiees attacking me and whatnot?
Now you're talking.
And Ambie Valdes in the third chair.
Do you want to play a board game?
With contributions from Total Fangirl
Vampires do not sparkle.
and our loyal listeners.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Welcome to another edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming, coming at the speed of something much faster than any of a number of long-form board games that move like an arthritic snail moving over sandpaper. Today's edition is brought to you by all of our friends over at Patreon, the men, the women, the boys, and girls who keep the lights on day and night. And today we're going to thank Fred Quiche, Herko Kiljunen, Jim Conrad, Christoph Kowalczyk, Brent Reinop. I can't even fake it. Kreinop. I'm Kingdom and your host today, Russ, without end Wakelin. And in the third chair, gaming podcaster, Boardgame Blitzer, and Disney whisperer, Ambie Valdes. Let's begin. Issue number 1. An escape room is a physical adventure game in which players solve a series of puzzles and riddles using clues, hints, and strategies to complete a series of goals and ultimately solve an overarching puzzle. Players must complete the riddles within a limited time frame. Question. The escape room genre is often attributed to an experience called the Real Escape Game in 2007. In what country was REG originally to be found? Rescue Russ.
I'm going to go with England.
Avoidance Ambie.
Japan.
Oh, and our guest gets one, and Russ remains steadfast and constant in his wrongness. Japan. More on that rich ancient culture later. Issue number 2. In many human endeavors, milestones are used to demark achievements along the way that are not otherwise notable, such as anniversaries and longevity. It may not be as dramatic as breaking records, winning awards, or more concrete achievements, but sometimes continued mediocrity is achievement enough. Question. What is the traditional gift for a 10th anniversary? Reference point,
Paper.
Russ. Archetype, Ambie.
Wood?
And that makes you both wrong. Tin or aluminum. So, Russ, you could make everyone a hat that matches yours and would be good. Issue number 3. There are as many reasons to game as there are folks who pull out the gaming table. Whether you're looking to hone your strategic thinking, work on your fading memory, relive the glory days of your youth, or explore fantastical fictional worlds, games can provide countless avenues of amusement, entertainment, and education. Question. On a scale of 1 through 10, with 1 being equal to the old British Mad Minute from before World War I, and 10 being equal to the Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi's recent 8-hour Magic Minute, what is the ideal game length for your average gamer? Racing Russ.
I'm going to go with 1.5 hours.
Accelerating Ambie.
2.
Yes, thank you, Ambie, for at least sticking with the way the question was stated. It was a scale of 1 through 10. Russell, thank you very much. And you are both wrong. The answer is 5, of course. I mean, that's how averages work, isn't it? I've never been very good at math. Issue number 4. Anime, also called Japanimation, is hand-drawn or computer animation associated with Japan, often characterized by colorful graphics, vibrant characters, and fantastical themes, even when the main theme is action-oriented cooking. Question. In what year did Namakura Gatana, the oldest extant example of professional publicly debuted anime, appear? Roranoa Russ.
1943.
Asuna Ambie.
1960.
You are both so pathetically wrong. 1917.
Oh, wow.
1917. It's been around for a while, Russ. I think we'll revisit this later in the show. That's it for now. Thanks for listening and good night.
This episode of the D6 generation is brought to you by
Battle Foam, protecting your army so you don't have to.
And the War Store, bringing the war to your door since 1999, and that is for a decade or more.
Hello!
Hello.
Hey, and welcome to episode 231, Craig.
I know, it sounds ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. Of the D6 generation, I'm Russ Wakelin.
I'm
And
Craig
I'm Ambie
Gallant.
Valdes.
Valdes. Hey, Ambie, how's it going?
Multi-talented.
I've been working on the last name for at least an hour now, and I'm getting it wrong every time. And now, and you know what it is, Ambie? On the Board Game Blitz, you almost exclusively go by your first name, so I never hear it said, and that's my problem. So I apologize, but I'm very excited. We are super excited to have you here on the show.
Yeah.
Our second Board Game Blitzketeer, right, on the show.
Yes.
We had Crystal on not too long ago.
A while ago, yeah.
Yeah, this is great. So thank you being on the show. It's really appreciate this. So while we have Ambie here, we're going to talk, of course, about her and her getting into gaming. We're also going to talk about long form games. Because Ambie, you've been known to dabble.
You know who they are.
You know, people out there who like to game like really long games. Like Ambie, you guys are playing XX games, right?
Yeah, 18 XX games.
Yeah. Those are pretty long. Not gonna lie.
Some of them are.
Doing those. Some of them are there short form XX games?
The short ones are usually like 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours.
They're just XX. They're just 18X.
Yeah. Well, see, yeah. So if you're in a game genre where 2 to 3 hours is short, you might be in long form.
They might be a long form game.
Right. Exactly.
That's
so. Also, we're going to talk a little later about escape rooms, or as fish like to say, escape rooms. So. We're going to talk a little about
only Russ.
So yes, so we're going to talk about those a little bit because Ambie's done a few, I've done a few, Craig's done a few. They're a lot of fun, and I think there's a lot of gamer stuff going on in there, right? A lot of gamer things happening.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But before we get to all that, Craig, we should talk a little about what we've been doing in the Lost Chapters lately. Now,
yes, that donut shop sees a lot of traffic for an isolated pocket of reality.
We did run into Ambie at Dunkin' Donuts, and Ambie, do you remember what we discussed while we were there?
Anime. Yeah.
We did discuss. It was anime with Ambie. We learned all about
it was. I was going to say it was mostly Ambie talking,
because I am
and Russ trying desperately to sound like he knew what he was talking about, and me admitting I have no
self-admitted a anime dabbler. You know, I watch animated shows, mostly the ones that target younger audiences. I've seen a few of the older ones, but Ambie, you're pretty hardcore. You've seen a lot of. I mean, how many shows do you think you've seen of anime?
Well, I don't know how many. That's tough.
If you can't count them, it's a lot. That's what I would say. Would you say it's more than 20?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you say it's more than 50?
Probably not that. I don't know.
Okay. So somewhere between 20.
Well done, Russ. You've taken 5 minutes of recording time to narrow it down.
Just establishing
20 and 50.
The cred here of her anime excellence. So anyway, if you want to hear more about how little Craig and I have watched an anime and how much Ambie has, you should check the Lost Chapter out. Craig, if someone wants to listen to a Lost Chapter, what should they do?
They should definitely listen to you explain where to find it.
Nicely done. So you head on over to the D6generation.com. In the upper right-hand corner, you will see a Patreon logo, a giant P. If you click that logo, it will explain how to become a Patreon member. And if you join Patreon for $2 an episode, you will receive the entire back catalog of Lost Chapters. It's like Netflix. You just suddenly subscribe, and there they all are.
It just all gets unlocked at once to the choir of angels.
Binge hours and hours of the D6 generation. Not sure why you would, but you could. And it's all right there.
You could if you wanted to.
So if you're interested in that, please check that out. So what's the time now for, Craig?
It's time now for Achievements in Gaming.
Yeah. Actually, Bob just asked. So we have the live chat room is in effect now.
Cut rate.
And I should mention this for the last few episodes, the achievement noise has not been playing, and astute listeners have noticed this. The reason it has not been playing is that I changed my technology configuration here at my house, and unfortunately, it has made it so that while it's easier for me to fast power up and get things going, I don't have quite the ability to get the achievement noise into the recording I would like.
You're lacking in functionality.
I am, so I need to adjust that. So I need to make a small investment soon to correct that problem. But otherwise, we're in good shape. So you have to pretend the achievement noise there. Just imagine it's happening in your head. Now Craig, over the years, we've had countless comments that people hate the achievement noise because they find it distracting. They don't know what it means.
Or they think it's a mistake.
So for those listeners, you are now in your glory.
Enjoy the sweet silence for the next couple of episodes.
If you miss the noise, it will be back eventually. So I apologize.
Yes.
All right. So guests first. Ambie, what have you been playing lately?
So I actually haven't been playing that many board games this year. I did play one play of 18 CLE, which is 18XX game, kind of long.
Now, how does that work? Because you're missing 2 X's there. Because doesn't the XX normally mean numbers?
Yes.
But there's an L, which could very well mean
Could be
long.
Roman numerals.
Yeah,
for
CL is a Roman
150
numeral.
what's it
18
mean?
clearly long example.
Yeah, so they're not always all numbers.
Okay.
So CLE actually stands for Cleveland in this case.
Oh, so 1800s in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I don't know. I don't know what.
Are you stalking like a killer down the cobblestone streets and alleys of 1800s?
Oh, are you
Cleveland? Is it
assassinating
something
like
that?
train barons? That'd be awesome.
No, it's still just being a president of corporate.
Okay. Don't say just.
Don't say just
minimize
own it,
your.
Andy.
Don't
It's awesome.
minimize,
It is.
minimize your
It
passion.
is taking
It's
profits
okay.
from trains.
Yeah, taking profits from trains, and the Great Depression happens in the middle of the game. So
Ooh.
Oh,
that's a blow to
too
your
Now, is that
soul.
like sort of an event that is it a pending event that like ends the game?
It's actually
it
in the
something-
middle.
Oh, cool.
So usually you upgrade your cities and they get better and better, but then in this game, the second to last one, it gets worse before it gets
Oh.
better again.
Oh, so it's kind of like you've got to be prepared to survive the depression.
Yeah.
Kind of. Oh, that's neat. That's an interesting idea. Okay, cool. So 18 CLE. See, I didn't know. I've learned something new. I did not know that the XX games had
Right
had
there,
letters
right
instead of
there.
numbers in them.
Yeah, some of them do. 'Cause
sometimes.
there's also more than 100 of them, so they would run out of numbers anyway.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
I see what they
Yeah.
did there. Let's just change the variable. Right. Okay.
Yeah, I've also been playing a couple of party games because I've had like friends over for a bunch of stuff. We played some Magic Maze, which is a
Now, how
real-time
does that-
cooperative game.
Go ahead and describe how Magic Maze works.
Yeah, it's a real-time cooperative game where I guess the theme is you're in a mall trying to steal weapons from it, and the mall is like a maze.
As you
Yeah.
do.
And then you try to get out. So you can move your pawns to get the weapons and then get out. But the thing is, you can only move one direction. Each person can only move in one direction, and you can't talk to each other during the game. So
Interesting.
you can move all of the different pawns, but only in the one direction. So you have to work together to get them to where you want them to go. And there's this pawn that's called the do something pawn that you put in front of someone if you want them to do something, but you can't tell them what you want them to do. So you're just like putting the pawn in front of them and like glaring at them. It's it can get a little stressful for the people, but it's
Now,
pretty fun.
how strict are the communication rules? Can you gesture?
No, you
you-
can't gesture. There's one like there's part of the game where you can talk when it's timed. So there's a spot that you go on to flip the hourglass over so you get more time, and then you can talk before you do an action. But other than that, no talking or gesturing.
That's awesome. So Bob Bob in the chat room is suggesting that having One Direction playing in the background could be thematic. And I don't know. Yeah, it fell flat, Bob. Sorry, I tried. So that's cool. So how many people can play Magic Maze? What's the player count on that?
It plays 1 to 8 players, but I like it best with 4 because with more than 4 players, like 2 people are doing the same thing, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
They have the same direction. And with less than 4 players, people have more than one direction, and it gets easier to play.
Nice. Okay. See, so it's okay. That's good. Well, it's good to know that because a lot of these games they don't really work at certain player counts. It's good to know.
Yeah.
You had this on your list. I have to ask you, what's Where Words? That just sounds cool.
Where Words is it's like 20 questions, the game, but there's a hidden werewolf that
As
These are
there
great
is.
mashups. It's like, you're shopping in the mall for weapons, or you got a werewolf in your word game.
I know. It's funny thinking about the theme of it because they're just silly games. But okay, so 20 questions, but there's a hidden person who also knows what the word is, but they don't want you to get it.
Okay.
And
a traitor mechanic in a word
Getting
game.
better already. This is like Scrabble for gamers. I love it.
Yeah, so it's pretty fun. There's other characters too. There's a seer who knows what the word is and wants you to get it, and then the mayor is the one who's answering questions. But it's really interesting because the mayor can also be the werewolf and
interesting.
guide you badly in your your answers.
Oh, I like this a lot. I got to check that one out. Where words. Very cool.
Yeah, that I think it came out last year, 2017.
Yeah, I missed that one.
Yeah, but there's a bunch of other games that came out in 2017 that we played too. Like Crossfire is a party game, another social deduction game. It's like 5 minutes long, and everyone has different roles, and but you know some information because you see some roles and then pass it and then mix it up between 3 people that are next to you before you get your final roll. So you know, like, oh, one of these 2 people is this, and then everyone has different win conditions. And it's just, I think it's 5 minutes of play. There's a timer.
That's very cool. I like it. Anything else on your list there?
Cool stuff.
Yeah, a couple more party games again.
Nice.
So Monikers is a party game. Have you heard of Time's Up?
Yes. Yep.
So Monikers is like that. So you have 3 rounds of, the first round is you can talk about a word that you're trying to get people to guess. The second one is just one word, and the third one is just charades. And you're using the same group of words each time. So everyone ends up memorizing all the words that you're guessing. Right. But in Monikers, it has like really long phrases sometimes, and they're not all child friendly. But it also has a description of the word. So if you don't know what it is, you can just read it out, and someone will probably know it.
Oh, cool.
So I like that because I don't always know what the word is.
That genre of game is just so much fun. The whole it's a great concept.
Yeah, lots of laughs. Yeah, and then last night we stayed up really late playing Crosstalk, which is a new game. Oh, another word game where you have 2 teams and you're trying to guess a word, but both teams are trying to guess the same word. And there are public clues. There are private clues and public clues. So at the beginning, the person who knows the word is giving a private clue to just their team. And then they give a public clue, and the other team guesses after you give the public clue, and you switch off teams. So the public clues end up not being that good because right after you give the clue, the other team gets a chance to guess. And you don't want to give it away.
Right.
So that was pretty interesting because you end up trying to do some obscure matching. And then we actually, last night, we both got to pumpkin and in completely different ways because like the other team's private clue was like an inside thing between the clue giver and the clue guesser that led to pumpkin. And then they were like, oh yeah, we got this. And then we guessed pumpkin and they were like, wait, how did you get pumpkin from those words? It was wrong, but it was fun.
That's awesome. Fantastic.
Yeah. That sounds like fun.
I like your party games. I have to get some of these because I'm always looking for new party games.
Yeah. My wife loves party games and not so much regular games. So that's definitely a list I need to go over.
Exactly. Great. Good list. Well, Craig, what about you? What have you been playing lately?
Well, before we went to Captain Con and did our big event, Russ and I did a giant, massive, twice the normal size game of Rune Wars. So we could test our concepts and the missions that we were trying to come up with and the alliances that we set up. So normally it's 200 points on 200 points, and we did a 400 points on 400 points game, which was a blast. It was a lot of fun as a one-on-one game. And then at Captain Con, of course, we ran that as a mega battle with a whole bunch of people. And I think we started with 12 people, 11 or 12. And then over the course of the game, which lasted, 2.5 hours, some people came in, some people left, and a bunch of people came around to watch. And so it was good fun to be had at Captain Con. We had a blast. This game is
a good game. It's a really good game. There's so much cool stuff happening in that game. And what was fun about it was, I don't know if Craig, you mentioned this, but we had 400 and 400, but it was 2 different armies per side. So it was all the factions.
Right. It was all 4 of the available factions.
I think everybody's really had a good time that played too. It seemed to attract a lot of attention. People were really admiring the models. And as many may know, Captain Con is primarily a miniatures gaming event. A lot of War Machine, a lot of 40K, a lot of all the miniature games there, Guild Ball, and everyone was stopping by looking at the models. They're good quality. If someone didn't tell you these were Fantasy Flight models that use the sort of the little board gamery more plastic, I don't think you'd notice.
No, and I mean it's only people who haven't played things like Imperial Assault that really come at this thinking that I think Fantasy Flight's got a really good track record for most of its minis lately. So we had a blast, and there's a lot of in-depth stuff going on in that game where if we were running a more conventional miniatures game in that kind of a venue, we would have been ignoring most of the things let's just we won't do morale. And you kind of shave off bits and pieces to make it work. But so much of the depth of the game is just baked into the basics and the dials and the cards that the whole game is right there for you at full throttle with just the core concept. So it was a lot of fun, and Bob, you are correct. It reminds me of Arcane Legions quite often as well. In some of the cool things, and then a lot of the not so cool things. Did it scale well?
I think so. I mean, it was definitely a tight table. We played with a little extra terrain just to make it look cool, and so I think on the standard battle size, I think if you want to go that big, you probably want to go a slightly larger table. So the models don't get each other's way quite so much.
Yeah,
but otherwise, I think it's fun. I mean, when you and I played straight up one-on-one with that many points, it was fun. I would do that again in a heartbeat. That was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. I think the only thing that you lost was some ability to maneuver because the units were just packed. So
Jason's asking, did it scale well? And some games get longer. But what's interesting about this is we played. Craig and I played ourselves at 400 points, and we time boxed to 2 hours. So the game is a 5-turn game. Normally it ends at 5 turns, and in 2 hours we got.
No, it's an 8-turn game normally, but we were keeping it to 5 because by 5 you kind of know.
But we got through 4 turns in 2 hours, and we did the same amount of time, and we got just as far with 12 new players all playing this thing. So it plays pretty fast. I think it was fine. If you look at a game, if you were to double a standard game size of many other miniature games, it would go a lot longer than that. So I thought it does a really good job.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the only thing that gets longer, other than the physical moving of the models, is if you have a person who's going to agonize over every dial choice, because you've got that phase where between turns everybody's got to order all their units, and if you've got a guy who's just bogging down, then that's going to hurt. So, but no, I thought it was great. It scaled. I would love to play bigger games. I mean, you get a lot more cool stuff on the board, so I think it was a big hit. I know that the Captain Con council was super happy with the turnout and everything that happened, and we're talking about next year already, so that was cool. And of course, Captain Con being a smaller con, you would think that the opportunities for playtesting new games and new concepts would be less, but Captain Con has attracted some really great designers. And then as longtime listeners will know from when he was on the show just a couple episodes ago, or one episode ago, I don't know, the time warp keeps killing me. Kurt Covert of Smirk and Dagger was there as the guest of honor, which was exciting. We knew the guest of honor, Russ. Wasn't that was
pretty awesome. Kurt was in fine form as always.
He was. I mean, that man. Yeah, if you're looking for a guy who will come and bring awesome games to your convention and work his butt, he's there playing games till like 2 a.m. every night of every convention he does. Wow. And he brought every one of his games from his 2018 catalog that he's going to be releasing. He had them all spread out, all the play test stuff. I mean, it was amazing. It was awesome. We played Not So Fast, which was violent, and I think I broke 3 fingernails.
Not So Fast was awesome.
It was.
So Ambie, this game, have you seen this game at all?
I don't think so.
I think
no, I don't think anybody has seen it. But have you seen Hex?
I've seen it. I have not played it, and I don't know much about it.
But this game, Not So Fast, is right in your wheelhouse, Ambie, for these party games, these fun, silly party games. So basically, how it works is it comes with these really cool, pretty large wooden components of different types of nuts. So you have walnuts, cashews, pecans or pistachios. I can't remember. Anyway, different kinds of nuts. Anyway, these then each player has a small stack of square cards in front of them. And when it's one of the players' turns, that player starts flipping over these square cards. And on these cards are icons of different nuts. And as they flip the cards over, you're looking for certain combinations of nuts to show up.
Mhm.
And if the right set of nuts shows up, you want to be the person to grab that matching nut from the center of the table, one of these wooden nuts. But the trick is there's never as many nuts as there are players.
Mm.
It's like musical
Exactly.
chairs.
So you,
Spoons, right?
so you grab super
It's exactly like spoons.
So you're grabbing super quickly.
It is
spoons,
spoons.
but with nuts. And you're grabbing these things super quickly.
So it's basically nuts.
Right. But don't do it so fast, because here's the trick.
Mhm.
Sometimes the right combinations come up and you want to grab a different thing and there's only one of them. And if you grab too fast and grab a nut incorrectly, you lose points. So
Mhm.
it's really it's a very simple game. What's tricky is the memorizing the combinations you need to have for the right nuts. But it is awesome. It's just that kind of game.
And
Yeah,
it's
that sounds
fast.
fun.
Because it's about nuts, the double entendres, are
They fly. Yeah. And and so it's violent. And I literally I broke at least one nail. I think there are two others that were like it was hurt. It was painful, but it was fun. It was fun in a painful sort of way. So we played that. Russ, we played that with a couple other guys that the con guys who were just walking on by. And then later on, my wife Karen and my son Reese were there, and they were there taking advantage of the hotel. Actually, Karen's studying for some massive test, and she needed to get away, and my son was in the pool. So so he had heard the term "Not So Fast." That's all he knew.
Right.
Was that there was a game called Not So Fast. And he was like, "Daddy, can we play Not So Fast?" I'm like, "How do you even know what Not So Fast is?" And he's like, I want to play Not So Fast. So we went over and I was like, "Hey, Kurt, you think we could borrow Not So Fast?" And with about 3 or 4 double entendres, of course, he handed over his nuts. and we played, the three of us played, and it was a lot of fun for that too, for a 7-year-old and his parents. So that was a blast. Russ and I, we both got a chance to play Streets of Steel by Wild Power
Yes.
Games, who brought you
High Heavens.
Who brought you High Heavens, exactly, by a new designer that's working with High Heavens. And that was fun. That was what was it, 80s or 90s video games
It was 80s side-scrolling fighting games. Remember, like
Mhm.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Streets of Rage games where you'd walk to the right, and the screen would scroll and you'd fight bad guys. It's that captured in a board game.
And I thought
It
that was
awesome.
fun
Yeah,
and
it was
fast.
great. It was fast. It was fun. It was silly. It was co-op. The best part was that as the game scrolled, you like move the little bits of road, and so if you're on the back row, you get knocked off and bad things happen. So what you want to try to do is stay ahead. It was really, really good.
You have to be moving forward, yeah.
So it's nice.
And and so that was fun. And that's why to go to Gen Con, right? You get the chance to play all these games with the designers, and it was awesome being able to do that at a small, more intimate and far less crowded venue like Captain Con. And so that was, and then Russ had to leave and I wanted to stay, and the Captain Con people wanted us to stay. And so I got a chance then late at night, because that's what, that would be the best time to do this. I got a chance to play with Matt, Alex, and our friend Brian Ahern, and our friend Ian's wife Amy, and Kurt Covert. We played the game that he was talking about, one of the big anticipated games of 2018 for him, Tower of Madness.
This looks awesome.
Which is the Kerplunk for grown-ups.
Cthulhu Kerplunk is what it is.
Cthulhu Kerplunk. But and it was a blast because he mentioned, he described it in detail when he was on, but each of the marbles is a different color, and each of the colors, some of the colors are good, some of the colors are bad. You need some marbles to level up and get abilities. Other marbles have very detrimental effects on you. And so it's very strange because you're, in regular Kerplunk, you're just trying to pull and not have anything fall. But in this, you're trying to pull, you want some marbles, but not too many marbles. And it's moving the game forward because as the mechanism of when you're pulling is because you're all investigators trying to investigate these different Cthulhu-esque locations or these H.P. Lovecraftian locations. And the locations have different abilities or different things, and you're rolling these dice, and think of it as Yahtzee basically, and you have to lock in one die every roll, and you need a 1 or 2 and a 3 to solve it, but then you've got 5 dice, then you need the remaining 2 dice to be high, because whoever gets a 1, a 2, and a 3 and then has the highest dice on those remaining 2 is going to win this location. And that's how you get your victory points. That and other and some marbles, some colored marbles fall out that give you some victory points as well. So so it's a push. There's a push your luck element with the dice. There's a push your luck element with which one of the tentacles you're going to pull out of the really cool 3D clock.
Now, let me ask you
tower.
this: can you see enough into the
Yes.
tower to get
You cannot see anything.
You can't tell if you pull
a
a tentacle if you're going to get a good marble or a bad marble. Right?
Exactly. You have no. In fact, Kurt himself. So it's kind of co-op. I mean, there's a winner, but you're kind of all trying to solve the same thing, and you're not really working against each other too much, although you will have access to some spells that can kind of mess with other people. But if you get too many insanity marbles, and they I think it's 5. Once you get 5 insanity marbles, you are no longer one of the team. You are now trying to actively work against them. And the cool little spell cards that are your abilities that you get over the course of the game, they're double side, like the top and the bottom, and they're like the bottom is upside down. So you flip them for your insanity side, and those all mess with everybody. Oh, wow. And so you have this opportunity to pull, and you're trying to pull because somewhere within the tower are 3 green marbles, and once the 3rd one comes out, the game is over. Cthulhu has arrived, and everybody loses except for the people who have gone insane. And so, so that was a blast. And I don't think I've ever really, I'm not a big Cthulhu guy, and this game was awesome. Brian is a huge Cthulhu guy, and he loved it. So I think it really goes across the genre. It was fun. It was suspenseful. Every time you're pulling the little tentacles out, you're waiting for the marbles to fall. You want some. The fact that you want some marbles to fall gives you this weird emotional. Do I really want to solve it, or do I want to kind of fail early on? And so it was really fun. It was a blast.
Very cool.
I also got a chance to play Seppi, who was on the show recently as well. His new game, they've actually switched up their publishing schedule a little bit, and he had the Inevitable Machine Revolt for End of the Line all set and ready to go, and then their publishing partner came out with a game that's very similar to that. So they switched it up, and he took out this game that I don't even remember him even mentioning. And it was in his little notebook of games that I think most game designers have. It's called Processing. And the concept is that all the players are representing various factions of this alien alliance that has taken over the Earth. And the only humans to have survived are hipsters. And the aliens, because they're not from Earth, they have a very hard time differentiating Earthlings apart. So somehow they can't tell cows and hipsters apart. So the whole game is a conveyor belt with these various pods of captured creatures, either cows, hipsters, or a combination of cows and hipsters. And the gamers, you have a hand of 3 and 3 cards. Each card is a different faction, and each alien faction wants to do different things with the cows and the hipsters. Whether you want to process them, probe them, speaking of double entendres, or free them. And so, you have a very set limit of votes for the entire game, and once you vote on something, that vote's gone. And so as they scroll along the conveyor belt, you're trying to vote for whatever alien faction you're trying to whichever card you're trying to score that turn or that round. And so you might want to be freeing cows and processing hipsters into meat, for instance. And so you're putting votes on the hipster card for meat, and you want to free the cows, but your card also has one combination of things that you get negative points for, and whoever gets the most negative points over the 3 rounds of the game actually gets processed and can't win. So even if you have the most points, if you've ticked off your faction the most, then you get processed and you can't win.
I missed it though.
So
are
it's like this
hipsters,
really cool.
Is it good to process hipsters or bad to process hipsters?
Depends on which alien faction you're coming from.
I see. Right.
You basically have there's I don't know how many cards of factions there are, but you get dealt 3. You get dealt 2 major factions and a minor faction.
Okay.
The major factions have 2 things they're looking for and 1 thing that they don't want to have happen.
Right.
And the minor faction is looking for 1 thing they want to happen. And you're going to score one of these cards each turn based on how many cows and hipsters went through the entire process that turn. And you're keeping track of how many were freed, how many were processed for meat, and how many were probed.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And it's just a really fun, fast, mildly disturbing game when you get, when you look too closely at the theme. It was Seppi all the way through. And you can only imagine. I mean, Seppi was playtesting this 2 tables away from us when we were doing our mega battle. And now all the things he was yelling at us while we were playing our mega battle make way more sense.
That's excellent.
But that was a blast. And while I was talking with Seppi the next day, a friend of Seppi's who he is kind of mentoring, named Patrick Fahey, was picking up a game. And I was like, Seppi, is this your game? I don't even recognize this. He's like, oh, no, this is my friend Patrick's game. And Patrick had a game called Mech Deck, which reminded me a little tiny bit of a game I play tested 2 years ago at Gen Con that never even arrived on Kickstarter that I was super excited about. It's a game where you have a deck of cards that represent the various different bits and pieces of a battle mech. And you're drafting everybody at the beginning of the game. You're drafting the bits and pieces. You need a torso, 2 arms, a backpack, and a set of legs. And so you're drafting for trying to make the best mech that you can. And then you're just battling it out on this hex board. And as you get damage, your limbs are shedding armor, and then they're falling apart. And it's got a lot of innovative mechanics. It was a blast to play. Your initiative every turn is based on how heavy your mech is, but you're shedding tons every time you get hit because your armor is sloughing off. So you're actually moving faster, even though you have less protection. And it was all very elegantly handled. You're managing your energy. You're managing your offensive capabilities and your defensive capabilities. You're making hard choices when you start to take serious damage and you have to start losing bits and pieces. There's terrain that you can shoot at and make explode. There's other pieces of terrain that will boost your power, but at the same time, it's dangerous. So there's a push your luck mechanic. If you can get into water, it's very BattleTech because that helps you activate your heat sinks better so you can generate more power if you're waist deep in water. And it's all done very simply and elegantly with some really nice graphic design, which is not surprising at all because that's what Patrick does during the day. He actually works for, go on my Twitter account to look at it because I can't at the moment remember it. It's the company. Apparently there's only one. It's like Pop Love. I think it's Pop Love. They do pop-up cards, greeting cards.
Oh,
and when
I
you
love
open them, they're fantastic. And he's one of their key designers, and they just got right now the license for Game of Thrones.
Oh,
Wow.
And he gave us, Russ, the Euron Crozza, and not Euron Crozza is it Crozza? Yeah. The Greyjoy flagship.
Oh, cool.
Silence. And so you open it, and it's crazy. It's designed right off of the TV show.
Wow.
With all of the artwork on the sails and everything. I tweeted out a picture of that too. So you got to check out my Twitter feed, folks, if you want to see a lot of like all of these different games in action, see all the different bits and pieces. So Mech Deck was super exciting. It was a blast. And that also is going to be on Kickstarter soon. So of course, that's the new normal, right, Russ?
Yes.
Nowadays, everybody who's got a new game doesn't want to talk to you about it because it's coming out in 2 months. They want to talk to you about it because it's going on Kickstarter in a couple months. And I don't think they have a date for Mech Deck, but it was super exciting, and I really, really enjoyed it. So then the next day was the Super Bowl. I don't want to talk too much about that. But before the game, when everybody was still feeling happy, we played Downforce twice with full complement of racers. So that was 6 players playing Downforce. And when you have 6 players, you do not have enough cards to move your car across the finish line. So it was very exciting. Because you have to like you're kind of like making alliances, and you're like, hey, I can move the orange car if you're gonna move the black car, if you know what I mean, and people are like, oh yeah, totally, I'll help you out. Oh, sorry, I didn't have any black cards, and so that was fun. And then ceased to be fun about an hour later, but that's okay. That's okay. Any given Sunday. Then this week I got back to the 40K table, which is exciting for me. And there is a local grow league that none of us can really do because we're just not disciplined enough to get in enough games to qualify for it. But we're sort of doing our own as it goes, sort of in parallel. So we went from 1,000 points to 1,500 points this month. So I got a 1,500 point rematch with Ian's White Scars. And everything that didn't work the last time I faced him worked, to the point where this is where the point swing of those cards, Russ, where it's really kind of raw, because from 3 objective cards in the top of turn 1, I scored 9 points.
Wow.
And 9 points is usually enough to win you the game over the course of 5 turns. So to get that in turn 1, I mean, I had 3 really strong cards. I had to do a lot to get that to work. I had to sacrifice half of my army by the end of the game. I had overextended, and there wasn't much I could do with it. But it got me those 9 points, and that kept him on the back heel for the rest of the game. But it was I still love that game. Still not bored with my Death Guard, so I'm gonna keep going with those. And then we played Downforce that night. So another game of Downforce, a lot of Downforce. Downforce is the game I've played the most this year.
Yep.
I'm trying to keep track for podcasting purposes, and I think I've played 11 games of Downforce since the new year.
Wow.
Yeah. And then Rail Raiders Infinite, we played that again, which is fun.
Interesting that's getting to your table more often than Colt.
Well, it's new, right? And so that's why. I mean, I don't think it's better than Colt Express, but it's faster, and it's got that, it's got the minis. And so what you've got is, I can be like, I can set it up really fast, and everybody's like, oh wait, what's that? It's all cool sci-fi. So, and chibi
sci-fi. You can't go wrong with chibis.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Chibi sci-fi is where it's at, man.
Exactly.
So that's me, Russ. I've been playing a lot of games lately. What about you?
I'll keep it quick because we already covered a lot of my stuff. So Captain Conway, we talked about Not So Fast. We talked about Streets of Steel. We talked about the Rune Wars Mega Battle. After Captain Con, though, after watching High Heavens be demoed, I came home and I played High Heavens immediately with my youngest daughter, and that game is still so good. High Heavens is such a good game. What I love about it is the component quality is amazing. So it's got all these miniatures. We had the Egypt expansion as well. So you've got your different pantheons battling. You got your Norse gods and your Greek gods and your Egyptian gods. And after playing Assassin's Creed Origins so much, I had to play the Egyptian gods. And then they stack on, as you listeners remember, you stack them on top of these really cool little discs. So if you've got a god with 10 health, he stands on top of 10 discs. And then there's other discs that are different colors that signify armor and weapon damage and poison and being stunned. And as your gods get wounded, you remove the discs and they get lower. So they literally, your gods rise with power and fall as they get wounded. Just a really solid game. So many cool mechanics happening, and yet it's such a simple game to learn. Really like that one. So I took the dive this weekend. I got Gloomhaven from the second round of Kickstarter a while ago. And hadn't got it to the table. And so the kids are like, let's try a new game this weekend. So I kind of forced it upon them, honestly. So I grabbed the box, and word of warning number 1 about Gloomhaven. The box is intimidating because it's the largest game box I've ever owned. So it's massive.
Yes.
But the second part about it is when you open said game box, you will notice that it's got about, I would say easily 5 to 6 inches of depth of just cardboard you've got to poke out. It's like many sheets. So it's lots of poking out.
That's like a dungeon crawl.
It's a cooperative dungeon crawl. But what's interesting about it is, and Tom Vassal of the Dice Tower keeps telling me I got to play this game because he and I both like dungeon crawls. Whenever we see each other at a convention, we talk about dungeon crawl games and how much we like them. And he's like, "Have you tried Gloomhaven? You got to try Gloomhaven." And the reason I hadn't tried Gloomhaven is because it's a pure co-op, and I prefer, at least I thought I preferred, dungeon crawling games with an overlord, right? So, level 7 to make a protocol or descent or imperial assault. But Gloomhaven has the mechanics of co-op. But what's interesting about it, Craig, and you'll like this. What's interesting about it is when you create your character, you also get dealt the character's sort of like lifelong dream. And you'll like this, Ambie. I asked my oldest daughter to sing "I've Got a Dream" from Tangle. So we got you get that. What's interesting is that's kept secret. And when you achieve that dream, your character is retired. And when you retire your character, this will signify, because this game's like a legacy game, there are other boxes that are and sealed items in the game box. And when you retire that character, the world doesn't end, but that character ends, but you then unlock other character classes. So you as a player will then play a different character, but the world keeps going. And the world can support glowing and evolving. And there's this giant game board, and you put stickers on it and you permanently alter it. And the world can support multiple gaming parties going through it and changing it and affecting it. And you people in your party can leave and return. So if you have a crew and the battles scale really well. But the other thing that's interesting is even during the battle or during the actual scenario, in addition to your lifelong dream that sticks you the character from scenario to scenario, you also have little mini scenario objectives that you don't get to share that only your character wants. So for example, in the game, kind of like D&D, you can long rest and short rest. And so my youngest daughter today, her secret objective was to take no long rests. So she's playing and she's not taking a long rest. Now, a long rest is more effective than a short rest. It gets your character back to fighting strength better. But a short rest, gets you a little bit of that, but not as much. And we're kind of saying to her, come on, take a long rest. We really need you to take a long rest. She's like, nope. And then she realized she's playing a scoundrel, which is basically a rogue. And she's realizing that, I explained to her that the money is not shared for the party. So the money's each player's party. So then she realizes she's got these abilities. So like my wife's playing the sorcerer and she killed these bad guys. And then she ended her turn standing on the money. At the end of your turn, you collect it automatically. The rogue realized she could push the sorcerer off the money and then stand on herself because she had a later initiative and steal the money from the sorcerer. That immediately prompted my wife, the sorcerer, to no longer heal the rogue the rest of the game. So it was great. We had party infighting right from the beginning. So it's a co-op, but we're like, screw you, right? So it was pretty fun. And the secret objectives are great. There's so much flavor in there. So these stickers happen in the game that change the campaign. You're faced with moral dilemmas, like these road events when you're traveling from dungeon to dungeon. It's like you've seen a caravan's been attacked. Which do you do? A, help them. B, kill them all and take whatever loot's left. Kind of thing. Like but that affects your party's reputation. Your reputation can go up and down. And having a negative or positive reputation also affects other game events. You're also trying to increase the prosperity of Gloomhaven, the big city in the region. And by doing so helps you out, but you could be increasing the prosperity of Gloomhaven to be bad or good, which is really interesting too. So like you can make the city militaristic, you can make it a city of hope, you can do all these kinds of crazy things. So it's really, really interesting. It is, and the mechanics are super simple. What's scary about it is it's very intimidating because there are so many components. Like there are 45 or so, or maybe even 50 different monster types. And they come with standees and they're all beautiful artwork and all these little standees. But you got to organize them all. How are you going to put them all away? And there's like so many tokens. So like I'm at the limit of like using battle foam and other stuff to kind of organize all these things into subcategories. It was like, it literally took me half the day to get all this thing organized. But anyway, we had a good time with it. My girls were kind of like, they liked it, but they're kind of like, why don't we just play D&D? So there's that situation, I guess you kind of have, but the nice thing is you don't need a DM. So I guess the problem my family might have with this is because they also play D&D. They're like, hey, if we're going to drop 3 or 4 or 5 hours here to play a game of this magnitude, let's just play Dungeons and Dragons. Although my oldest daughter's like, but look at all the cool standees you could use as monsters. So, there's that. But I like it because if you don't have a DM or D&D group, or if it's just 2 or 3 of you, the game scales really nicely. So you could play 2 players easily. So there's some nice things happening here. It's really impressive mechanics. I'm looking forward to diving a little deeper into that one. So That was my big game. What about modeling? So, Ambie, I know you're not a miniature gamer. Do you paint at all or anything like that?
I like painting, but I haven't had time recently.
What have you painted late in the past?
I used to take art in high school, so.
Oh, cool.
I like painting stuff. I painted.
That's nice.
I painted my Sulkin gears. Sulkin is a Euro. It has gears that move around.
Oh, cool. That counts. That totally counts. Yeah. That's awesome. So do you do a lot? Do you bling out your board games mostly with a little bit of your artistic skills?
Yeah, I try to. So when I have time, but lately I haven't had that much time. I actually just got Stuffed Fables recently, which is a new board game.
I got that too. I picked it up at Captain Con. Have you played it yet?
No, I just got it in the mail like 2 days ago or something.
Yeah, it's got cool plastic though. Are you going to paint them up?
Yeah, I want to paint them at some point.
That is cool.
Yeah, they're definitely calling out to be painted. Those little guys.
Yeah, they're really cute.
Well, let me ask you this: since you haven't painted anything lately, are you working on any new parody songs or Disney parodies?
I've been kind of in a writer's block, but I've been doing an ongoing project that I don't know when I'll ever finish it, but I want to do like a whole musical.
Oh wow! Is that going to be a parody?
Cool.
Yes, a parody musical or just a
parody?
Oh, very cool.
About 18XX.
I like it.
Oh,
of course. Of course.
That'd be awesome.
It all makes sense now.
Yes. Well, I want to hear that. Please finish that. I'd like to hear. Craig, how about yourself? What have you been painting?
Well, I finished up my humans, my Dakan humans, by putting decals, as you saw, on all their shields. So that really kind of that those big expanses of empty blue filled up nicely with decals from Gin Fritter's Workshop. You can look that up online. Actually, he was a sponsor of ours for a couple episodes many years ago. And a really nice guy, and the decals are basically the crowns that you see in all the Rune Wars artwork, I think.
Right.
Or crowns very similar to them.
Enough not to tell
and
right.
Yeah, exactly. And so I really enjoyed that. And then, well, Russ, it's like this. I try to get guys like forces so that I can get your brother over my house and Pete and Joe.
Yeah, sure.
And of course there's 4 of us.
Yeah, right.
And we invite you, and you are a great dad, and you are very often like, I'd love to, but I'm having more fun with my daughters, which makes perfect sense because you come from such a strong
Gloomhaven games.
Gaming tradition. Exactly. So I needed 4 armies of they liked Rune Wars. And of course, I had 3.
Oh my God! Are you doing the rest?
And so, what I did was I texted your brother and Joe, the 2 guys who generally have more money than sense, and I was like, "I've got 3 of these armies, and you guys have been playing with them, but everybody likes elves, especially Pete." And Pete was like, "I like elves," and and I was like, "So I'm not going to pay more money for any of these guys, but if you want to have one more army, I will be happy to paint it." And of course, I got the response back from all 3, like, "Grab whatever you can." And the War Store is very kind when you take all of something off their shelves on the second day of the con.
Oh, did you go buy them out of?
I went by. I got 2 starter boxes and a bunch of other stuff, and basically I bought everything for elves that they have.
Everything I have,
which was everything except this. I have a little bit more than you have. But not. Yeah, actually, you'll have a little bit more with me because I got you some stuff too. I'll get that to you on Tuesday, hopefully. And yeah, so you'll have a slightly larger army when all is said and done. But I've been I primed and undercoated and dry brushed and started painting 80 elves.
80 elves.
Wow.
That's a lot of elves, dude.
That is a lot of elves. And the terrain that came with them. And I didn't get a chance to do the terrain with the Ufuk Ilan Chaos guys either. So I've got 6 more pieces of terrain. And once I finish those, we will have a 3D physical representation of every terrain type in the game so far.
Wow.
So that's it. And I got all the bits and pieces. I got a bunch of Bones miniatures and some of those new primed D&D miniatures. They're making terrain elements now, like really cool pillars and things. So I have everything I need now to make those 6 pieces of terrain in addition to 80 elven models.
Nice.
So that's what I've been up to lately.
Excellent. What about other random geeky goodness like books, TV shows, movies? Ambie, what have you been doing in that area?
I've started reading a Star Wars book called Thrawn. So I haven't really read any of the Star Wars books before.
Is that a new book or one of the old ones?
Yeah, it's a new one.
New one?
So why did you choose to start there?
Well, I walked into the library and it was on the shelf right there.
That is as good.
I like your discerning taste and research. That's excellent.
Well, also someone had suggested some Star Wars books and that was on the list. So I saw it there and I was like, okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Plus it's the library, so you're not really paying anything.
Yeah.
Are you enjoying it?
Liking it?
Okay. Cool.
I also, after talking with you guys about anime, I started watching Ruby.
Ooh, what'd you think?
I like it.
So how far in are you?
I think I'm still on season 2, I think.
Okay, so when you get to the end of season 3, let me know.
Okay.
Because the show changes tone dramatically.
Oh, okay.
Yes. In a good way. It goes much more grown up. So it feels like the show is very targeting kids, which I think it kind of is in the beginning, but it all of a sudden sort of like takes a right turn and you're like, oh, that's cool.
Okay.
But interesting.
Yeah.
Kind of unexpected. Yeah. I think you'll.
Yeah.
So cool. So who's your favorite character? I have to ask these questions.
I don't know.
See? All right, fine.
I'm also bad at remembering the names of characters. So
yeah, well, the initials. How about the initials? The initials are right in the name, so you really can't.
Yeah. Okay. I forget which one's which.
Well, R is Ruby.
Yeah, R is Ruby. So W is Weiss.
Weiss, the dresses in white. She's got like sort of
I like the one the one with the bow.
Oh, Blake.
Blake. Okay, yes.
Blake. Do you know why Blake wears a bow yet?
Yes.
Are we not there yet? Okay, all right, just
I do know why.
No spoilers. All right, fair enough. All right. That's where it gets interesting because the show starts to get all these themes that get a little more adult as it goes on, which is sort of interesting. And you also think it's a show it's like a Harry Potter Hogwarts thing, and it takes a right turn at some point. So anyway,
yeah.
All right, well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. Let me know how it turns out.
Yeah. And I'm still watching Overlord, which is another anime that we talked about, I think.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And yesterday I did some nerdy things. I did an escape room, which
of course you did.
Yes.
We'll be talking about later probably. And
yeah, exactly.
And I did something called a beer math competition, which
how does that work?
It's an annual competition that my brother-in-law has set up. And we do this math competition called the AMC, which is a high school math competition. I forget what it stands for. But anyway, so that has scoring points. But then we do it at a bar and we drink beer as well. And the beer, you get points for drinking beer. So the combined total of the math points plus the beer points is what your total score is.
So it's okay to have
the assumption would be that your math scores are going to go down as your beer scores go up, maybe?
Yes. But it's okay because you're drinking enough beer, it compensates for your lessening math skills.
Yeah, theoretically.
I get it. Do the math problems increase in difficulty? Like, do you move from algebra 1 to like calculus?
Well, it's a test that's set.
Right.
The AMC 12. I think it has up to like trigonometry stuff. It's competition math though, so
okay.
It's a lot of tricks. So people who know competition maths are at an advantage.
It's right.
So like I never did that in high school. So
right.
No,
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that is not something I would do.
I would do it.
I would be very impressed with somebody who did.
Yeah, I want engineering problem beer. I think that'd be excellent.
I want Shakespearean soliloquy beer.
Like remember in high school you had those little like physics and engineering problems, like you had to build a bridge and see how much out of balsa and see how much it would hold.
I remember when other people.
So what would be cool is you had to drink and then build that. I think that'd be excellent. See how far you go.
I think high school is a little different than how you remember.
Well, I was very nerdy, so I went to different high school. I went to the same high school as Craig, but we did different things.
No, I meant drinking and building bridges. I think that's frowned upon.
She's doing math problems from high school. Now with beer, I want to do.
I can just see walking into a bar, right? And there's Russ at the
With
mat
bridges.
with a bunch of
and power tools. And you're
I'm
"Bring
seeing
on the beer.
Actually, I'm seeing him with white glue
Yes.
and popsicle
Yeah,
sticks.
the popsicle
That's
stick.
what I'm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's yes. We'll do that.
Yeah,
This is a thing now. Craig.
and a beer that's
Right,
untouched
what could go wrong?
because he doesn't drink beer.
Yeah, I actually didn't drink any beer, but
See,
Yeah, no. And then at the other end, I would have several empty pint glasses around me that had once at one time held Guinness, and I would be expounding upon the virtues of
Shakespeare.
to be or not to be
Shakespeare.
in a
Shakespeare
slurred,
beer drinking. How
very bad British
your
accent.
version of that, Craig, would be English beer, where you would simply do Shakespeare quotes, losing points for the number of mistakes you made, but you get bonus points from any beers you drank.
yeah.
Yes, but I would get points back for doing it confidently.
Yes.
See,
Yeah, right.
like I could do it wrong, but sound like it was
This
right.
is brilliant.
That was,
I think
that
there's a
would be the-
board game in here somewhere, Ambie. I think there's some kind of like board game that's a drinking game
There's something.
and has some kind of dexterity skill / calculation skill that involves drinking beer. This should be there must be one of these.
Mhm. Exactly.
Craig, what about you, sir? What have you been doing lately?
Well, I am still listening to Song of Ice and Fire. I am listening now. I have 30 hours left of A Dance with Dragons, and Andy in the chat room is he's into A Feast for Crows, so he's right behind me, catching up fast. And I've got to say, listening to 1.5 speed is the whole. It's making all the difference to me. When they're talking about characters I don't care about because I know what happens to them and it's not nice and they're going to be gone soon, I don't care because it's only like 10 or 15 minutes. And I'm getting more of the characters that I do like and I'm enjoying it. So, so I'm enjoying that. And I think I think the frustration of reading A Dance with Dragons where you're getting all this other stuff that you don't really care about because it has never been mentioned once until now is sort of lost when it's going by so fast and you're just more enjoying the stuff that you are familiar with and watching those plot lines develop. And I mean, part of it is frustrating because you're not getting the development because, of course, starting with the fourth book, he split up all of the characters. So each book has only got so many characters in each. And there's plots that are going simultaneously that you don't know anything about, but it's fun. Just sort of reconnecting with those other characters. And there's one enormously huge plot addition that I totally forgot about because the TV show must have just decided not to include it at all. And when that showed up, I was like, "Oh my god, that guy's still alive!" So that was cool when that when I got reminded of that. So I am enjoying myself, which I thought it was going to be a slog, and I was going to be like, "Oh, I'm just doing it to say I did it or whatever." But I'm really enjoying listening to it. And of course, it's bittersweet because Roy Dotrice, as we said earlier, passed away just a little while ago. So this is probably, unless they've done something clever, and he actually did finish the last two books and they're all set and ready to go whenever the TV show ends. And Roy Dotrice actually got a chance to narrate them before he passed away. Sadly, this is probably the last of those. Yeah. And so then what am I watching? I am watching also inspired by our conversation about anime, Cowboy Bebop.
So what do you think?
I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it a lot. Sadly, I made a mistake and I was listening to, or I was trying to watch the version they have on Netflix, which is the original Japanese with English subtitles. And I just can't do that. And I was like, oh, if this is it, I'm done. But I thought I'll check one more time. And it was on Hulu. The whole thing is on Hulu, which of course is how we watch our TV now. And so I'm watching that and I'm really enjoying it. It's very Firefly-esque, which of course I enjoy. And, I mean, each episode is only like 22 minutes or so. So it's not getting too deep. The stories don't get too deep, but they're neat and it's cool. And they've created a really neat world. And so I'm really enjoying that. I'm also getting back into The Walking Dead this season, season 8. I watched the first episode in the fall and was like, meh, and never went back to it. Even though I got my wife to buy the whole thing for me on Amazon. So now she asked at some point, like, how come you're not watching that? And we already paid for it. And I was like, okay. So I went back and I'm enjoying it, but I'm enjoying it in a totally different way than the way I enjoyed it before they killed one too many main characters. So back then I was invested and I was excited and I was all into it. And now it's more of an academic and artistic exercise, and I'm interested and I'm curious, but I am almost completely emotionally disconnected from the characters, which is sad, but at the same time, it's probably healthier.
It's probably healthy.
It is. It's probably
well,
healthier.
stay sane, Craig. That's important.
Exactly. I saw The Greatest Showman again.
This almost isn't news, Craig. This is just Craig watched Greatest Showman 6 times in a row. This is what this is.
6 times, not in a row.
Okay.
But that probably puts it into like original Star Wars territory. I don't think there's
episode 3 territory.
Yeah, I don't know. There's probably maybe 2 or 3 other movies I've ever seen. And probably not even that, maybe 1 or 2. And so I love it. It's awesome. I'm loving it. And that time I paid for, out of my discretionary budget, my whole family to go see it. I paid out of my discretionary budget for my parents and my in-laws to see it earlier. So I love it. And I won't deny it. And then I paid my karmic dues for going to see that again by being getting to go see Peter Rabbit. And although I had a really nice sleep in the middle of it, all I'll say is General Hugs really hates rabbits. That's what I got.
Okay, good to know.
That's, of course, that's the same actor who plays General Hux in the new Star Wars movies.
Well,
yeah. So that's me. Russ, what about you?
I'll keep this really short because we're going long, but I'm between fun books. Unfortunately, I'm doing some workbook reading, so not as exciting. But I'm all caught up on Star Trek Discovery. Ambie, are you watching Discovery?
I have not watched it. No, I haven't really watched any Star Trek. Yeah, I feel like I should watch it at some point.
I feel like you should, just to be able to relate to your co-host. But yes, it is. Discovery is quite good, and what's nice about Discovery, you could watch it. It's self-contained Star Trek. There's really while there's some very light references to the other stuff that's happened, it's more fan service. You don't need to. Yeah. You don't need to see it, and it's actually a pretty cool. It's also. It's good sci-fi. It's not particularly Star Trek sci-fi. So if you haven't enjoyed other kinds of Star Trek, I think you'll enjoy this.
Yeah.
So I'm really enjoying that. Also, so this show just showed up on my radar. Has anybody seen Northwood's Law?
No.
So it's not a nerdy show. It's a reality TV show that originally started off following the fish and game department in Maine. But now, since season 7, Craig, yes, it's been around for many years.
Yeah,
it shifted over to the New Hampshire fishing game.
Well, how could it not?
This is really interesting to me because, it's my local state. But what I did not realize was how much sort of honest to God law enforcement sort of duties that fishing game does. Like you think of fishing game, you think like these are the guys that are checking fishing licenses, maybe they're, making sure that the moose you just caught, you didn't shoot a turkey too close to your neighbor's yard, that kind of stuff, which they do all that.
You're just going to gloss over the moose that you just caught. Is there a lot of moose catching going on in New Hampshire?
Yeah, sure. Moose are a problem.
Moose trap.
Yeah, sure. But but what they do a lot of that, but they also do like the very second episode is like, they're doing search and rescue, and then they're trying to find a drowned body. And then the next thing you know, there's like, it turns out like, because all of these towns are so small and so remote, they basically do everything the police do. But then they also, because there's just not enough police to go around in these areas. So it's pretty interesting. It's a pretty compelling show. Anyway, just if you want to know what New Hampshire's like, it isn't really exactly like it, but kind of.
I was going to say, nobody's catching moose in my neighborhood.
We were in southern New Hampshire, Craig. You got to go like to Coos County and stuff up here. Also, I'm all caught up on Ruby. I really enjoy it. Now it stinks though, because I'm all caught up and I got to wait another year for the next season. So that stinks. Ambie, have you seen Sword Art Online?
Yes.
And what did you think of that?
I really liked the first half of the first season, and then it
that's what happened.
Switched.
So so I've gotten exactly to the end of the first half of the first season. So my youngest daughter's already watched it, or is already caught up, right? And then my oldest daughter and I, now that we're caught up on Ruby, we're like, let's watch more anime. And my youngest daughter's like, I've watched Sword Art Online. I liked it until the second season. And so we watched it. So we got to the part that is the end of the first half of the first season, which I feel like they could have just chopped it there and called it a story. And it would have been a really cool story with a really cool ending that makes you kind of think like, oh, and I really like how they fixed. There was this one problem with physics that was bothering me the entire show that they answered in the end. I'm not going to spoil it. But it was really cool. But now I haven't watched the next episode after that, Ambie, and I'm afraid to, because I'm afraid it's going to ruin the show for me. Is it bad? Is it like really bad?
I can't even remember, but it gets kind of bad. And then there's a new season.
Bad in what way? Bad in what way?
Well, like one of the characters gets weak. Like
weak.
She was like really awesome,
like
and then and then it's like more of all these girls are there, and there's a main character guy.
Okay. In full disclosure, the nickname I used to coincide with Ambie during Rapid Fire was, unbeknownst to me until after I did it, taken from this anime. So if there was any insult, I assure you it was unintentional. If I chose that particular weak character, I apologize.
But yeah, I think there's a new season of Sword Art Online coming out that's supposed to be
happening. Good. And that's what I'm trying to figure out, because my youngest daughter, she basically has the same attitude you do, where she, like, it gets terrible, but she's like, you kind of want to watch it because it's kind of like a train wreck, you know. But then she said, "Oh my gosh, a new season's come out! I can't wait." I'm like, "Well, wait a minute. I thought you said this last season stinks. Why are you?" She goes, "Well, I like the world they built. I just don't like what they've done with the characters."
Yeah.
So, is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm looking forward to seeing the train wreck with my because she's willing to watch it again with us. Although she sits in the corner and plays on her Switch. So maybe that's what it is. So speaking of the Switch, video games, real quick, I finished the main story of Assassin's Creed Origins finally, but I just didn't want this game to end. So I did every side quest possible. I'm like maxed out, but then the DLC came out. So now I'm doing the DLC stuff, which is awesome. Craig, you would love this. So
yeah,
the reason I know you don't like these kind of video games, but you'd love the story, because as you know, Assassin's Creed takes back places in different times of history, and it's taking place in Egypt right when the Romans are just starting to trickle in. You know, Cleopatra's lost her throne. She's trying to get it back. The Romans are showing up. And the way you interact with Caesar and other stuff is really cool. It's really interesting. Anyway, really liked that. So this new, I'll talk about this more in the app of the app, but I just started playing Kingdom's New Land, which is a really, really interesting sort of retro 16-bit graphic side scroller, where you're basically either a king or a queen on a horse, and you just ride back and forth trying to keep your people alive and expand your kingdom, while every night these little creatures called the Greed try to attack you. It's really interesting, super creepy, and one of those games where you are just sort of constantly discovering how it works, because it's a very retro game in that it tells you nothing. It just sort of plops you in the game and kind of says good luck. And you have to discover how it works. You can cheat and look online and see how other people did it, but I would advise not to do that. Just try it. But I'll talk more about this in the app of the app. And lastly, for my youngest's 14th birthday, she got a Nintendo Switch. And I have to say, I have been underwhelmed by Nintendo for a while now. And so I've been kind of focusing more on my Xbox and PlayStation stuff. But the Switch is a really cool piece of technology. I have to say, they did a really good job with that. And my daughter has, it's kind of funny. She likes the new Zelda game, but she loves Pokemon. And so now there's this Pokemon fighting game on there that she's totally addicted to. But I think it's really cool. The hardware is really nice. The way it pops apart is really cool. It's a nice piece of technology, I have to say. So I'll probably talk more about that in the future. Ambie, do you have a Switch at all? Do you know anybody who plays with the Switch?
I don't have one. I kind of want to get one, but I don't play video games that much anymore because I play board games.
It's probably best to not.
But yeah,
my daughters enjoy it.
I've heard so many good things about it. So
yeah, I was trying to avoid it too. But so my daughters have DSs, but they really only play on them now for like their Pokemon games. They're still interested in. But when she heard that the next Pokemon game will be on the Switch, that was pretty much, I need a Switch. That's pretty much what happened there. So, Whew, that is a lot of achievements, guys. That's wow.
We achieved a
So I
lot.
think we need to take a quick break, and when we come back later, we'll talk about. I can't remember. Oh, you know what it's going to be? It's going to be long form games. What? I can't see.
And now, in an attempt to bring a small amount of dignity and decorum to this otherwise base form of entertainment, and I use the term loosely, I am proud to present...
Oh, get on with it. It's time for App of the Ep.
Seriously, Wakeland? I used to have my own segment, and now I'm relegating to announcing this pap.
Hey, you're lucky we still use you.
Hey everyone, welcome to another App of the Ep. This time around I want to talk about Kingdom, a New Land. That is Kingdom, a New Land. This game is available, it's been around a little while now. It's available on iOS. It's available on Steam. It's available on Switch. I know this because my daughter just got a Switch. More about Switches in the future. And that's actually how I discovered it. So my daughter got a Switch. She saw that Kingdom, a New Land was available on it. She got super excited because she has some friends who like it, and so she picked it up for her Switch with her birthday gift card because she got the Switch for her 14th birthday. And when she picked it up, I was so enamored with this little 8-bit retro graphic, I guess 16-bit technically retro graphic game, that I ended up seeing that it was also available for iOS and snapped it up. What's interesting about this game is it's one of those really beautifully rendered, great background music, classic 16-bit graphic styles. What's really great about it is the progressive, very simple gameplay that adds complexity as you go. The basic premise of the game, I don't want to spoil anything because it really is a game of discovery. The whole point of the game is you learn as you go what you can and can't do. But you start out as a simple monarch riding on some form of steed, typically a horse, but that may change over time. And you are either a male monarch or a female monarch. It's sort of random. And you start to build this little you start to expand your kingdom on this island, and you really start with nothing, and you're riding through the woods. It's a sort of a horizontal side scroller. You go left and right on your horse. The attention to detail in this game is amazing. Your horse will get winded if you run too far. As you go out, you'll try to find things and discover. You'll discover people who are sort of wayward souls wandering around, and if you give them a coin, they'll join your cause and become parts of your kingdom, so you grow your kingdom. And then back in the center of your kingdom, you can craft bows and hammers and other things which then assign duties to these individuals to do for your kingdom. But you also want to make sure you build walls and other defenses for your kingdom, because eventually something called the greed will come in each evening. And in the first island, there's different islands. So basically the levels of the game are islands. And as you play, you'll discover more of these islands. But in the beginning of the game, you start on Island 1, and the greed doesn't start very strong. But slowly the greed starts to come, and each evening these little creatures start to attack you. And you want to have sufficient walls and archers and other defenses to repel them. And should you ever fail and your crown drops, you are slain and you lose the game. If, however, during the course of your defenses, you manage to actually find a ship on the island, rebuild the ship, and then set sail, you go to the next island. So you've basically completed the level. So you have to, and as the game progresses too, the greed gets stronger and stronger. So you have to balance your desire to build a really nice, strong, happy kingdom with your desire to eventually leave the island and go start over somewhere else, because eventually, no matter how good you are, the greed will eventually overpower you because it just gets stronger and stronger. What's interesting, though, is the more you want to leave the island well stocked. So you want to leave the island with lots of people as well as a big bag of money. So when you hit the next island, you're ready to rock. What's interesting about this game, though, is there's no save and redo or anything like that. The game saves as you go, and should you make a mistake, you start over. But it's really great. The music's great. It's sort of a relaxing, cathartic experience. I ended up playing this thing. I was on a plane flight for work, and I started playing it with the full intention of actually doing work while on the plane. Even though I was flying after, it was 11 at night, it was a red eye. And I ended up playing the thing on the whole darn flight, which was terrible. I should have slept. It was great. Very compelling, very addictive, just a really wonderful game that's really about resource management. And here's my tip. Don't just build everything you can. Really, after you sort of experiment and learn, really focus on what you need to build and what you should not. But a wonderful, wonderful game that is Kingdom, a New Land, available on Steam and mobile devices of your choice, including the Nintendo Switch.
Thank you for listening to another scintillating edition of App of the Ep, a segment in which,
Hey, less of that. More just getting on with the show.
seriously, Wakeland, you are like school in summer. No class.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. And so we have, as you know, we have Ambie from Boardgame Blitz on. And as you know, Boardgame Blitz, those gals, they know their board games.
They do.
And Russ really long board games originally. And I've been known to play a long board game every now and then if I'm forced at gunpoint. And so Russ doesn't really get a chance to talk about long form board games very often. And we thought, well, Ambie's here,
Yes.
and she would probably love to talk about long form board games with Russ because, you know, she's a nice person and she probably feels some sort of and this thirst that he has that he just cannot quench
Yes.
in any other way right now.
I'm certain that's what it is. Thank you, Craig. Could you say
That's
you
pretty,
did a pretty good job of squeezing in long form games in there quite a few times. That was pretty impressive.
several times.
was-
I just want to make sure that we're clear on the theme
We are.
of the segment. Long form, not to be confused with longboards.
No,
They're totally different.
different. Yes. So Andy,
And I don't really know anything about them either. So
I actually used to longboard.
see,
Hey, I
she's
knew it.
perfect.
There was a dovetail in here. Well, speaking of your past, Andy, since you've never been on our show before, it'd be great for the listeners to get you to know a little better. And one question we always ask first-time guests here on the show
Mhm.
is, are you now or have you ever been a gamer?
Yes. I think I've been a gamer like my whole
Would you
life.
care to elaborate?
Your whole life. So what are some of your earliest memories of gaming? What are some of the first things you did that kind of made you think, I like this whole gaming thing more than just Monopoly and checkers?
I used to play board games with my family. Well, board games and video games with my family a lot when I was a kid. So we did play Monopoly and Risk and Clue and other games too, Stratego, Hero Quest, Dungeons and
Hero
Dragons.
Quest. See, you snuck in and Dungeons. So did your parents play D&D?
Yeah, so we used to go camping, and
Yep.
my dad would be the DM, and I was like 4 or something. I was a barbarian. My mom was a dwarf thief, and my brother was an elf, I think. So my dad would make up the dungeons, and he would also help us with the
cool.
die rolls and stuff. And I just remember I would be like, oh, I want to break down the door or something. and then he would let me know what happens. And I kept track of how much gold I had, I think.
Nice. That's awesome.
Nice.
So,
Hey,
do you remember what edition D&D that was? Do you have any memory of?
It was probably like Advanced Dungeons and Dragons or something. I don't know.
Oh, the early stuff. I love it. That's fantastic. What a great dad you had.
yes.
And parents in general. That's awesome. Well, because I think I've been playing. When my kids were younger, we did do like introductory kind of role playing games. I didn't do D&D with them until they were much older, like 12 or 11.
Mm-hmm.
But I did do like these little intro role playing games, like this game called The Fairy's Tale, where you played fairies in the woods and stuff, and used role playing mechanics like rolling dice when they were like 5 and 6. But 4, that's pretty impressive. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I think with a lot of board games, my parents would house rule them so that we could play them, like Pictionary or something. Before we could read, they had these little flashcards that were things, like pictures of things, and then we'd try to draw it. It was
That's
probably
awesome.
really hard to guess, but
That's fantastic.
Like training you
Yeah.
for
That's
for
right.
Pictionary. Pictionary training camp.
Yeah, you're probably good at the pictures and drawing games, right? That's fantastic. And did you just stick with it the whole time? You never outgrew it or never felt it was just for kids? You just stayed with it the whole time? That's great.
Yeah, we played board games like through high school. When I went to college, I took a break because I got busy with college. And then, but people at college were playing games, and I started playing Dominion there. And some people played longer games. I think,
Yeah.
I remember people had Galaxy Trucker, and I think someone had Twilight Imperium, but I heard that those are multiple hours, and I didn't have time for that in college because I had to do work.
That's smart. That is excellent self-control, Andy. I'm really impressed.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
Bob in the chat room here, one of our patrons is online while we're recording this, and Bob is mentioning that he was excited to hear you mention Stratego because I guess a lot of people haven't mentioned Stratego. But, you know, Bob, I don't know if you know this, but not only So Ambie, did you play the classic Strategigo, the original version with the wooden pieces or the plastic pieces?
I think it had plastic pieces. Maybe I don't remember.
So I had that one, but then I had, I think it was called Generals, but it was basically Stratego. But this was during the era when they decided to make everything digital.
Mm-hmm.
So what they did was it was Stratego, but in original Stratego, right? So the pieces, you can't tell what the pieces are your opponent has. So when you go to attack a piece, your opponent reveals the piece,
Mm-hmm.
and then now you know where that one piece is.
Mm-hmm.
So if he wins, you're dead, but his piece is still there, right? So the digital version I had, which I think was called Generals, you would pick up your plastic piece that you're attacking your opponent with, but instead of him or her revealing it, you'd go to the side of the board and you'd lock them both in these little slots, and the little slots would read the bottom of the pieces, and it would make this little noise, go do 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 do, and then it would light up to show you which side won, and the other side would kill their piece. But the key was you don't know what piece the guy has, you just know that it beat your piece. So you know it's better, and you as the player who won, you don't know what the other player had either. You just know you killed it. So it's kind of interesting because you never really know. You just know it's better than a pawn, but you don't know how much better. Is it as general, or is it just like a middle guy?
But it could be a bomb too.
It could be a bomb too. Yeah. Pretty interesting. So that was my version of Stratego, which I thought was awesome. I did like Stratego a lot. It was a great game. But that's awesome. So great. So Ambie, so then later, as you said you took a break during college.
Mm-hmm.
After college, how did you get back into gaming?
Well, during college, I did play some Dominion and Chichu. And so I had started learning more about the modern board games. And then after college, I had more time again. And my boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, had also gotten into Dominion a lot. And we started getting board games together. So I think like one of the first ones we got was Arkham Horror.
Well, there you go. See, Craig, long form games coming in here. Because Arkham Horror could not be described as a short experience. Could it?
No.
So my husband got it for his birthday. Basically, he went into the game store and asked for a hardcore game. and then
hit me with your best
I
one.
just try and get that for him for his birthday.
That could have gone horribly wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the next one he got, or one of the next ones he got, was Twilight Imperium, 3rd edition.
Oh, nice. You guys went right to plaid. So you went from, I don't really have
there was
time
no
for
middle
these
ground
long
there.
games to, I could kill a day and a half in a single game right now. Right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So when you guys started now, so this is a great segue. See what we did here, Craig? She is a professional, right? This is clearly a podcasting professional.
Yep.
So she just took us from her history right to long form games. You see, we did that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
So Ambie, what drew you and your husband then to getting into these longer form? I mean, what made him go, give me, it's like walking up to your bartender and going, hit me with your hardest drink. Like, give me your hardest core game. It might be something that lasts at least a day and a half. Like what decided to make you guys really want to go that route?
Well, for him, that's his personality. I think he likes, when he gets into something, he really gets into it.
Yep.
And I was excited because after college, I don't have homework on the weekends, and I just have a normal job that doesn't have work on the weekends. So I have a whole day or two on the weekends to play games.
So it's kind of liberating post college. You're like, I could just wake up on a Saturday and play a game all day, and I could not fall behind on anything. It'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
That's nice. Excellent.
But yeah,
so,
sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I don't only like long games. I like all types of games too. So it's not only long games.
Well, that's cool. And same with me and Craig. One of the things, Craig is much, I would say that Craig and I used to be much more into longer form games when we were younger. And we've moved away from it a bit as we've gotten older.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
it for me takes me back into a long board game.
Yeah. But like when we were younger, like we'd play a game of like 40K like all day long. Like we'd set up this giant, massive scenario. And
board game. We would do like a whole weekend.
Yeah, right. So you could do that. We play games like that. But now I generally like shorter games, but there are still certain games that I really like knowing that it's going to be an all-day experience.
Mhm.
And so that'd be kind of fun to
Right.
talk about. Like, what does a game have to have nowadays for people with, because obviously, Ambie, with you and your show, you play a lot of different games. We play a lot of different games. What does a game have to take to really want us to block out like a half a day or longer to play it, right? What does it need to appeal to you? Like, what would make you and your husband go, that's something worth looking at?
Yeah, it needs to be epic, basically, in one
Right.
word. But so another genre of games that we've gotten into recently are 18xx games.
Mhm.
They're train games, and they're heavy economic games where you're buying shares in corporations, railroad corporations. And so once someone will be a president of a corporation, other people could have shares in it, and then you're running the railroads and getting money and paying dividends and stuff. And there's a lot of things that are going on in a game. And some of these are shorter. And for shorter, I mean like 2 to 3 hours.
Right.
Whoa,
That's the short version.
Wow.
So Ambie, for our listeners who aren't familiar with 18xx, because a lot of people say this all the time.
Mhm.
So when you say 18xx, that's representing the year, right? Like,
Yeah.
these are games that take place generally are concerned or almost always concerned with railroading, and they're
Mhm.
set sometime in the 1800s.
Yeah, because that's when railroad became
Was a
big,
thing,
yeah.
right?
So a lot of the
And-
names are like years, like 1830, 1889, 1817. They're the years
Are
that
they all
something
by the same
happened.
company?
No, they're by variety of designers.
No, it's a well, interesting. So it is actually a genre of game. I
Yeah,
always thought it was a like a by one. I had no idea it was a whole genre.
yeah, it's a
Wow.
whole genre. There's like over 100 games, I think, in the series. Or in the
Wow,
genre.
there you go.
And do they have different mechanics too? Because they're
Mm-hmm.
not by the same designers, they're not by the same companies, right? They're just
Yeah, they have different mechanics too. So a lot of them
Right.
have similar base mechanics where you buy shares and you run companies and there's a map, but they all have different maps. They're all about different time periods, and they have different rules based on the theme. So like in 18 shoot, I get the numbers confused, but I think it's 1841. There it was in wait, let me look it up to make sure. Wait,
all right, just checking the numbers now. So what I find interesting about this, well, Ambie's looking this up. So what I like about longer games, like Ambie was describing, right? Epic games that they it's got to feel epic,
Mhm.
right? So like what's interesting about this is I like sort of epic storytelling or epic discovery, right? I like to watch the stories unfold. So when I think about, well, I find that a lot of the games that I play that are really long form now are 4X, usually space exploration 4X. So like Eclipse or Twilight Imperium, although that's a little too long for me, or Star Trek Ascendancy, or something like that, right? Where you're exploring the universe and discovering things as you go. And I like the story, or Legend of Z is another good one. And what's interesting is you're discovering stuff and you're following a story. And because I'm following a story, I get less concerned if I'm not going to win. Because one of the things about long form games that gets rough is if you've made an early mistake
Oh yeah.
and you feel like you're locked out of winning and the real goal is to win for you to play the game, you're looking at hours and hours of, not winning. But if it's more of a story you're trying to watch unfold, then it's less concerning that you're not going to win because you're really there for the story that unfolds and hanging out with your friends, right? So it's kind of a little different. What's interesting to me about 18xx is there a story, Ambie, or is it more watching your different friends do different strategies and seeing which one works? Or like what kind of keeps you engaged during the entire period?
Well, the game develops a story. So, like, we played a game of 18 Cleveland last night, and during that game, the person who was winning changed like three or four times throughout the game. So, and then after we were done with the game, we talked about it for like half an hour about what happened and like, oh, it was crazy when this person did this, and then it like completely changed what was happening in the game. So it's not a theme story really, but a story more of what happened that game.
So it's almost like watching the economic engines and economic strategy being used to build your sort of victory point engine or economy engine, if it will, and seeing how it pivots and seeing how the different players react to your strategy, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So
that's cool.
Another thing about 18xx is in most of them, there's no luck. It's all player interaction. Like the game state is known. So the changes are from what people do and there's no like card draw or anything. So
got it.
So if you're
I can see why that's really appealing. I can see why that's really appealing, actually.
Yeah. So if you're in last place, you realize you're in last place. You're like, okay, I have to do something. And so you do something that swings the game. And then someone else is in last place and then they have to do something. And so that's, that happened a lot in the game we played recently.
That's awesome. Andy in the chat room just said 18xx, forge the narrative, trademark. But I can see why that's appealing, because one of the things that gets you in trouble in my favorite long form game, which is 4X, right? One of the things that makes 4X interesting is the explore part. And the way most of these games handle exploration is it's got to be random by its very definition. If you knew everything was, you wouldn't really be exploring. And the problem is, even with really solid ones like Eclipse and have very heavy Euro mechanics, they still have the risk of you flip over the tiles and you're surrounded by less useful resources than your opponents are surrounded by, right? And so they have a leg up on you. So there's always that little bit of luck. Now, I think that's interesting, because how do you react to that situation, right? And how do you deal with it? But to your point with 18xx, since everything's known, those kind of bad luck situations never happen. It's really your opponent does something, you react to it, then you get a little bit ahead, so then he reacts to it or she reacts to it, and it just changes the dynamic of the game, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. That's really cool. So part of it is just watching the strategic and the moments. So it sounds like there's also those little peaks and valleys of crescendos where there's like a moment of, like, I also like games with dice in them, because you get the stand-up dice rolls, right? Like you have a long, like in some of these 4X games, you have a long moment, you're building up your fleets, or like in Twilight Imperium, you got a big moment, you got a giant battle, and it comes down to a couple dice rolls, and everybody's like watching with horror as the one guy gets really lucky and fends off a massive attack, and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. Do you have that in 18xx, or is there some kind of equivalent of that kind of thing?
It's not like a one dice roll type thing, but we're usually standing up at the end of a game. But yeah, it's not exactly the same feeling, but there are still epic things that happen. Like, like if someone does something, you see that it's going to change something. Sometimes it's hard to see what's going to happen, especially if you haven't played the game that much, because there's so many different levers you can pull, and sometimes the effect is way down the line. So if you're newer to it, you don't know what's happening. But we played 1817, which is a longer epic 18xx game where you can short sell people's shares. It's a super stock market game. So we played that with people who've played it over 100 times. So they're professionals.
Oh, wow.
Like
they're hardcore. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was really cool seeing that. And they would kind of explain what's going on and like what happened because of what they did. And I thought that was really epic.
That's neat. So, and I know there's conventions, or at least sections of conventions, where the entire room is just 18xx people, right? Like it's hardcore.
Yeah.
That's neat. Now, is the map development interesting? Because I know you're in some of these games, you're building railroads, right? I mean, you're actually taking, I don't want to call it area control, but you're essentially trying to establish the right railroad route. So is that part of the compelling part too? Because you're actually sort of seeing the map evolve and sort of the little who's going to own what sections of the country, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so in most of them, that's also part of it. There's little hex tiles on the map, and you get hex tiles that have routes on them, and you put them on there. And so you can build a little route for your railroad, but people can also have their railroad intersect with yours and change a tile or like build in the way of you. And each city has openings for stations, and each company has a certain amount of tokens that they put on there. And that means like they could run the railroad from it. But if there are too many tokens in a station or in a city, you can block off other people. So that's a huge part too, like tokening the area and blocking off people.
Ticket to Ride's got like a mini version of that, right? Because you can kind of block people out. That's neat. I like that. That's what I like about 4X games too, because you're basically developing a map, and then you can leverage the choke points in the map, and so there's a dynamic too, which I think makes the whole thing really compelling and adds a lot more player interaction because you're trying to cut each other out.
Bob's got a good question, and I think the answer is yes. Axes and Allies. Remember that? That used to take a long time.
That's a long game. Yeah, that's a very long game. It's a classic too. I like that one a lot. Ambie, one question that Bob also asked was for a long form game, is competitive better or cooperative better? And I know you mentioned Arkham Horror earlier, which is cooperative. Do you and your husband prefer the competitive nature of 18xx for a long period, for longer games? Do you like co-op too? What's your take on that?
I like both. So this is hard. I feel like there aren't as many cooperative ones that are that long.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So it's hard to compare. Because Arkham Horror,
Lord of the Rings pretty long. There's a couple, but I don't know. I like, because you mentioned earlier, I think one of the things about long form games that really is cool is the socialization of it. So you mentioned, like, after you guys played a full day of or whatever 18xx, you talked another half an hour after like a 5-hour session or whatever about how cool certain parts were. And I think it's kind of like when you have a nice long day of a role playing game, right? There's so many moments that you remember. And I remember when I ran the Descent campaign, I played with the same group of guys, I don't know, months. I don't even know how many hours, and each one was a session, and technically a small, a 2 or 3 hour game, but they all added together to one big campaign. And we still talk about like moments of that campaign and events that happened in that campaign. And so you build these memories. And I think, while when you play a lot of short games back to back, like let's say you play 10 rounds of Werewolf or something, you'll remember the laughs you had one night when you played Werewolf a bunch of times. But I don't think it's quite the same as when you have like an afternoon of a game. No. And there's just a memory of that time you did it. So I think there's definitely a camaraderie you get with these longer games that you don't really establish in shorter play periods. Does that seem right?
Yeah. And Bob in chat said Pandemic Legacy for a cooperative long game. Yes. So yeah, that one was really good too. So yeah, I don't know cooperative or competitive, which I would prefer.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
You like a little bit of everything. Variety is the spice of life.
But you know what, guys? You're bringing up a good point in the chat room here, and I actually just got my Kickstarter from Gloomhaven. It's sitting here in the corner. I haven't played it yet, but I think that these legacy style games, or arguably Descent and Imperial Assault, do it as well.
Campaign style,
where they're campaign style, right? So you can get a long form game in sort of bite sized chunks.
Yeah.
Right. So you meet weekly, play an hour or two. It's complete. That experience is like an episode of a TV show, right? But then it ends, but you're not really done because you play again next week and the story continues, right? And the legacy games in particular, the legacy games really feel like you're still playing the same game because the map and the world is permanently changed based on what you did last time. That's pretty neat. That's a good way to get it, Craig. Get your bite-sized chunks. But it has similar challenges where I got to get the same group of people. So one of the challenges, and Ambie, you're lucky.
I would say that's a huge challenge.
It sounds like you have a pretty cool play group that you and your husband plus some friends that can reliably play these long-form games, because that's really the biggest challenge, is finding a group of folks who can regularly meet for that long of a time window, right?
Yeah. But yeah, that's a problem with the 18xx games. We don't play 1817 that much because that one actually takes like a whole day, whereas the other ones we can do, a lot of them we've been doing on Friday nights, where it doesn't take a whole day. We could just do it at night because it takes only like 4 hours instead of 7. So, but yeah, we've also been having problems scheduling Time Stories and Pandemic Legacy Season 2 because we need the same group.
It is hard because I have the same problem. Like I really, so I've been leaning on my daughters now. Like we were playing Undercity or and some of the other games by Privateer Press. Same thing. There's like a little campaign mode. We played level 7 with a group locally here. But again, it's finding those people, getting them committed. And then one of the guys' schedule changed, and all of a sudden we had to pause, and we haven't really been able to get the band back together. So it's definitely tricky, which is a shame because I agree with you 100%. The stories and the camaraderie that come out of these things is really, and in the end, I think that's what makes like in the 18xx games, is there always a way to kind of make a comeback? Or do you ever feel like you're shut out early on if you make a bad mistake early on? Or are you just done?
So yeah, sometimes you can be done early on. I actually recently played a newer one called 1868, and I was pretty much in last place from the auction at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
At the beginning, they auction off the different private companies to start it off. But I was really excited because, for one, I realized that I was in last place, and that because of that, and normally I don't know.
Right.
I also made myself like a own mini goal of I want to get this corporation built up to do something, and I was able to do that. But it was still fun, even though I knew I wasn't going to win. I just tried to do as well as I could.
Yeah, it's kind of because you kind of look at it like, I think especially one of the advantages, I think it's more frustrating. So like one of the long-standing jokes on our show is very early on in this show's history, we made a parody song for the 12 Pains of Christmas. We called it the 12 Pains of Gaming. And in that song, we sort of relentlessly mocked Twilight Imperium.
We did.
Taking too long to play. And that was because while I love the idea of Twilight Imperium, and this, by the way, was like second generation Twilight Imperium. This is even third generation Twilight Imperium. But while I love the idea of it, like it seems like it's my ideal game. It's 4X. The art's fantastic. The little plastic bits are amazing. The whole idea of taking over the galaxy is really cool. It's got some neat mechanics with the whole, bidding for turn order and all that stuff. Really cool ideas. But I'd only played it like 4 times at that time. And I had never been in a game shorter than 10 hours. They were just always long. And I think if you know you're going to be able to, now I know most people can get it shorter than that. And I know like Ambie, you used to play it, right? And you and your husband got to tell, like, what was your average play length for Twilight?
It was usually about an hour per person. So
okay, so that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's actually really good. I never experienced Twilight Imperium that short. I wish I could. But I think one of the things that I think makes it work is if you know you're going to play again. So like you play these 18xx games pretty regularly, right? So if you're going to lose, but you're like, yeah, but we're playing again next week, and I might as well use this game to try to test some other theories and see what things might work. So I can't come back today, but I'm going to learn some tricks, right? Like that seems cooler. But if it's like the one time you're going to play TI for the year and you're now losing, you just kind of get bitter. So at least I did it. This could be a personal feeling of me, Craig. I'm not sure.
Well, you are a bitter person.
But I feel like that might be one of the reasons people get grumpy when they're losing some of these games. So I don't know. But yeah. So any of the thoughts on these long form games? Like, do you see this being a thing for you and your husband for a while? Do you feel like there might be a new thing, but it'll always be a longer game because you just like the duration? What do you think?
Well, I think one thing that's hard is just finding time for it, and if we as we get older and possibly have children, we'll have less time for that, and scheduling will be harder and stuff. So that's a big thing that makes it difficult to play these long form games.
Kids will slow you down for a bit, but then later you've created extra game groups, so it's fine.
Yeah, then you need a bigger player count.
That's right, because now, my kids, we loved Legacy Risk as a family. That was great. I got a locked in play group, and the best part is they can't really say no. Well, I'm your father. You'll play this game with me now. Darn it! So I have played that card a couple times. Actually, I forced my kids to play the new Doctor Who game, and that didn't go as well as I'd hoped. Honestly,
no.
It turns out you gotta kind of like
Doctor Who. Force somebody to do something.
Yeah, well, forcing's rough. Forcing's probably not a wise call. But anywho, well, Well, Ambie, thank you again for joining us here and talking to us about the games you've been playing lately. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back with a game review, although we're not sure which one yet. We've got to figure that out between now.
It'll be fun. It'll be a fun-filled 30 seconds.
It will be. It'll be like, to you, no time has passed, but to us, we got time to figure this out.
We do.
We'll be back shortly.
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, total fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy. And Lestat now stares a vampire.
Hey everyone, this is Nicole, your Total Fangirl. You can follow me on Twitter and check out everything I'm up to at NicoleWakeland.com. Our shout out is to all of our wonderful supporters over at Patreon. Head to patreon.com/the D6 Generation and you too can support the show. So a little bit back, I talked about how my daughter and I were watching Orphan Black and that she's really into it. And there was a whole Agricola thing, which I still think Russ has not managed to get his copy from Rafe because Kit really wants to play it. And I think she's going to make him despite his protestations. But something kind of neat has happened just as a parent. So you introduce your kids to nerdy stuff that you like, whether it's games or television or comic books or movies, whatever it is. And you share those things because you love them, because you enjoy them and they appeal to something inside of you. And you share them with your kids, especially when they're, old enough to understand, but still little and learning things and finding new things. Partly because you want to share, but also partly because you sort of hope that, well, maybe they'll kind of get into some of the same things as you. You never know what your kids are going to like. You never know what they're going to want to do. But there's a part of you that hopes they appreciate some of the same stuff you do. That you kind of like to think that. Not that they're going to be little mini-me's, but that they'll like some of the same stuff you do. So the fact that Kit really likes Orphan Black warms my heart because I love to be able to watch these nerdy sort of sci-fi-ish shows with her. And we've been watching this one, even though Russ and I have seen it because I rewatch it with Kit when Russ is out and about. And oftentimes when he's recording this very show downstairs, Kit and I will be sitting watching Orphan Black. Well, we finally got to the last season, which as I understand it is the last season, although I see rumors on the internet that there might actually be a movie. The thing is, Russ and I never got to the last season. We stopped watching before the last season, not because we lost interest, just because we sort of lost track of when the final season came out and we were doing 800 other things like you do in life and we hadn't seen it. But now I'm up to it with Kit. And originally, Russ had said, hey, when you get to that final season, if you guys get that far, stop and we'll all watch together. Well, it was sort of neat for me because we got to that final season and I said, hey, Kit, wait. We can't watch anymore, just you and me, because Daddy hasn't seen this yet, and we're going to watch it together. And she's like, no, that doesn't work. This is our thing. I want to watch it. Dad has to watch it on his own. I said, you don't want to watch it? He's like, no, because then we'll have to wait for him, and he'll be recording the show or doing whatever, and we'll never get to see the whole thing, so we're watching it without him. So Kit and I have started watching the final season of Orphan Black without Russ. Now, I love Russ, and I would normally watch the show with him. However, Kit does have a point that we'll be waiting forever if we try to get him on board at the same time as us. So we're not going to wait for him. And Kit and I are going to watch the final season. And it kind of warms my heart that not only is she liking something that I like too, but she wants to watch it with me. So it's our special thing. And Russ, good luck. When you find the time, you can watch the final season and see what happens for yourself.
Hey everyone, and now it's time to talk about our friends at BattleFoam.com. I am really, we've been talking about BattleFoam for years on the show. They're one of our earliest sponsors, and they've just been very good to us and been a great relationship. And we've always enjoyed BattleFoam, but I love BattleFoam in general. It's getting to be that time of year for con season again. Adepticon's coming up. I got to get my models out there. I got to get my Rune Wars out there. I got to get my War Machine out there. And I've said it before. We've talked about it when we get back from Adepticon almost every year that, we use our battle foam and it gets our stuff there safely. Now, I'm a big fan of the actual foam. I love the fact that battle foam is really firm. It does not rip. They do have some softer foams now coming out, but I really like their original stuff. I love that they can laser cut it in any shape. I love that they get the pre-made trays for most of my game systems. I think I mentioned not too long ago, I just clicked one click and I ordered all the trays I need for Rune Wars. I mean, not Rune Wars, well, Rune Wars too, but I I just got them for Rivet Wars, and I got all the trays for Rivet Wars, and have to think about it and to figure out what I need. Just click and got it. But now I also know that a lot of gamers are really passionate, especially those that go to places like Adepticon and they're crystal brush painters or hardcore painting competitors. And there is definitely a school of thought amongst painters that they really want nothing to ever touch their painted model besides air. Because when you're going to a painting competition, they don't want to coat it with any kind of protective coating because it looks best just with their paint right on the miniature. And so if you rub the model against foam over time or anything else, it'll eventually wear it off. And so the solution those folks have come up with is magnetizing their models and sticking them to trays. But now Battle Foam has an amazing Magna rack system. They've had it a little while for their transport, so you can put the racks right inside your existing Battle Foam bags. These are great plastic structures with metal trays that are ferrous metal, so your magnets stick right to them wonderfully. But now they've got these Magna racks as well that you can put into your home for displaying your models. So it's a fantastic way to take your models in your case, get them to where you want to go, and then when you're done traveling, take them right out of your case and put them right into the rack so they can be displayed. It is a wonderful system, and if you are a hardcore painter, this is a great solution for you. So check out all this stuff, the amazing bags, the amazing foam, and now the amazing Magna racks over at battlefoam.com.
You're listening to the Dice Tower Network at Dicetowernetwork.com. More fun than Merchant of Venus. Wait, what?
Who writes these?
Hey, welcome back. And now, of course, we have the Queen of Escape with us, right? We only found that out after the fact when she was on the show. Not only is she like some kind of major expert in anime, but she is not the kind of person you want to kidnap and then try to keep against her will, because she, as they say, has a certain set of skills.
Have you tried that, Ambie, before? Have you tried the Brer Rabbit thing where, like, please don't lock me in that room, you know, and then they lock you in the room and then you just escape?
I don't think many people usually try to kidnap you and lock you in a room.
Well, this is good to hear. Whew. I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to tell lately. Good. Well, excellent. So now we should probably, because I think escape rooms are awesome, and I've done only 2, and I want to do more. Ambie, how many have you done now? What's your escape room record?
So I recently, my husband and I tried to log down all of the escape rooms we've done, so we made a Google Doc. And
oh wow, so you're getting serious.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You're getting serious, Craig. This is serious business.
When you got to use a Google Doc to keep track of something,
there the equivalent?
You might be addicted.
So Ambie, when we talked about anime, you had the website that tracks all the anime shows, and of course, Board Game Geek tracks all the board games. Is there like an escape room site where you can go track all your escape room activities?
I'm not sure yet. I was just looking up if there is one, but I saw there's like an app where maybe you can, but
they're totally
yeah, there should be.
Yeah, but so
what have you gotten to? Do you know what you've done now?
I've done 17 or 18.
Wow.
Okay, I have 18, but one of them was a take-home, like puzzle.
Oh,
thing.
yeah, that's a thing now. Kind of like, Craig, do you remember like How to Host a Murder? Those box games back in the 80s and 90s?
I know. Yes, now they have
there's home game
now they have the escape room box.
I've also done a bunch of escape room board games that didn't count in here.
Okay, right. So it's fair to say you're passionate about escaping rooms.
You are a person. You find something and you really drill down.
Right. Exactly.
18XX, anime, escape rooms.
Yeah.
I love it. So 17. Now, Craig, how many have you done?
I have technically, it depends. So I did one traditional escape room for Rafe's birthday, which was a lot of fun. And then I did 2 of these experiences called the 5 Wits.
Yeah.
Which are more than one room. It's a full, it's like there's usually 5 or 6 different locations that are all thematically connected. And the production values are much higher than your average escape room, but the puzzles are usually a little more simpler and geared more towards kids, like older kids. But I enjoyed both immensely.
Excellent. And I've only done 2. So I did one with my family in an exotic place, and we'll talk about that too, like how much a location matters. And then I did one for work. So we did sort of a team building exercise. And we had there's actually an escape room place like right where my business is. And so we did a bunch of those. And that was interesting too, because in that setting, you can set it up. So if you have more people, than can fit in one escape room. They run multiple rooms, but they time it, and then you can compare your scores. And what's really cool is while you're in the escape room, it shows the top teams in their current times. So while you're doing it, you have the added pressure of not only trying to escape the room in the time limit, but now you're trying to beat those annoying guys in sales, or whatever.
Right.
Which is kind of but before we get to all that, we should probably define so Ambie, what would you, since you being the most veteran of escapers, what do you call an escape room fan? What do we call those people?
A person who makes it, or I don't know.
No, someone who enjoys escape rooms. Kind of like if you're a roller coaster addict, you like to ride roller coasters a lot. Like, what's an escape room? We don't know, right? We just have to make
I don't know.
Is there a name for a person
I don't know.
who does roller coasters?
Yeah, I didn't know there was a name for that either.
Well, no, maybe not. Well, anyway.
They're called
rollies. Yeah, sure. Coasters. No, that's a drink thing. Anyway, moving. So Ambie, what do you think defines an escape room? Like, what are the essentials of an escape room?
So usually it's a timed thing where people are working together to solve puzzles or do something in order to achieve a goal. And it's
right
in a room or multiple rooms or some sort of thing. I actually did one in a bus yesterday, so it's no longer
that's
just
cool.
in a room.
That's really
that sounds cool.
But yeah, so it's basically working together to do something to complete a goal, I guess.
Right. And everything you need is usually in the room.
Yeah.
Right. So it's
usually
kind of like a mystery, but also, or at least a puzzle, right? It's cross between a mystery and a puzzle box.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, depending on the escape room too, right? Like sometimes the theming is really strong and all the mystery stuff makes sense. And other times it's more of a puzzle box where like one of the ones I was in, you're looking under the chairs for letters to be on them. Like why would anybody put them there? That was just where they would be. Or like it was a math puzzle where you had to figure out the combination for the safe, and it was based on the number of pastries that were currently because we were in like a little bakery room. And so it's the number of pastries that were currently on sale indicated the combination, but which was a cool, puzzle box sort of thing, but not really a realistic way you track your combination. You're like, are the most of the ones you do like that, where it's more puzzle box than really thematic?
Yeah, well, I really like the puzzle ones. So but I also like it when they have really good theming in it.
Right.
Similar to my idea on board games, but so a lot of the ones I do, they have good themes but also interesting puzzles. Actually, some of my favorites were they have mechanical puzzles, or like mechanical electronic stuff. So one of them actually had floor pads where you had to stand on certain parts of the floor in order to do the puzzle, or you had to stay on certain parts of the floor and walk. Like the floor is lava type thing. You have to walk through certain parts to get to the next area. It's really cool.
Right. Yeah, there was the one that we did for Rafe's birthday was cool because it had a chessboard and the pieces were all on it, and it's something inside it. There must have been a magnetic lock inside it, because in one of the books was a book on chess strategy. And in a different book was a journal, there was a reference to an opening gambit. It didn't say it was chess. It just said this opening gambit is the most effective. And so we went from there. You had to find the book. Had to open it, find that gambit. And then when you moved the pieces in exactly that way, a secret compartment in the pedestal of the chessboard popped open.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It was really, that was really cool.
We had a similar one where it was there was something in the wall and you had to have this magnet, and when you move the magnet you could feel the thing moving in the wall, and when you got it to drop into the right thing, that would unlock the secret door, right? So I'm with you guys, I like the physical puzzles, but I also like some of the a lot of it's the ones I've gone to, and I also like when they're do you prefer the multi-stage room or the single stage room, like when it goes from room to room, or just one room, get out of it as fast as you can?
I prefer knowing that there's another stage. We didn't know there was another stage, so we're like, yay, we did it. Click. Oh, we got into there's another room. And I think we had 10 minutes left when we opened the second room.
I think a lot of them have multi-stage that I've done, and I like that because, well, unless it's a big room, if it's just like a small room, then it might be too easy. I don't know.
Right.
That's cool. Now,
like the 5 wits ones are, you're going into multiple rooms, so the goal in each room is to get out of that room into the next room, and then at the end there's like some goal. Either it's to one was to stop a bomb from going off. There was an espionage one where you ended up in this bunker of this evil spy agency and you had to stop the bomb from going off. We did not, in fact, stop the bomb from going off.
Uh-oh.
And luckily there's an inner bunker there. So if you're failing that, they're like, quick, into the bunker, and you dive into the bunker and you close it, and then the lights go out and the whole thing shakes, and when the door opens again, you're in the same room, but it's been completely destroyed by the bomb. So the bunker must rotate somehow on a housing and open onto a different room. So that's how elaborate those 5 wits rooms get. But the puzzles are almost there's some intellectual puzzles, but usually they're much more physical, and they remind me a lot more of Survivor challenges than more traditional escape room puzzles. Like there was one where we were in the Nautilus, and there was it had run out of whatever formula the Nautilus used to keep the giant squids at bay. And so you were trying to recreate the elixir, and you had these various components that were these giant cartridges full of tubes, and there's like 3 tubes at the top and 2 tubes exit from the bottom, and you have to put them in an order, and there's like 5 different stations so that each of the colored fluids going in from the top were going into the right place in the bottom, and they were all crossing, and that was crazy. I would not have been able to do that. It was like my 13-year-old niece who was like, wait a minute, I figured it out. And she like did one, and then they all like came together after that. So so those, and that was just because you had to do that before you could get to the next room, which I believe was the bridge. And so those are all cool.
So Ambie, what do you think the ideal number? Because Craig makes a good point about people. I think what part of the fun here is having friends with you, so you all are sort of working together to figure this out.
Oh, absolutely.
What do you think the ideal number of folks in the room is?
So that depends on the room. Some rooms are good with up to like 8 people, and some are made for like 3 or 4 people. But really ideally is when the room is correctly sized for the number of people. Because the one that I did, it was yesterday. Yeah, yesterday was in a bus, and it was kind of cramped. It said it was 3 to 8 people, and we had 7 people there. But I think it probably would have been best at like 4 or 5.
Right.
So a lot of times they have like best with X number of people. But what I don't like is when they don't let you book the whole room, and then so it just books up to the max number.
Oh, you get random people. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then you can't do it with the best. You have to do it with max, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's bad. I think I would recommend, that's a good tip, Ambie, and I think we should have a section on, we should talk about things to look for in escape rooms, but I would definitely suggest that you stick with escape rooms where you can control who, that you basically reserve the whole room, right? So it's a private quote unquote session.
Yeah.
Because it makes it more fun, and you want to know the people in the room. I think that's part of the fun.
Yeah. So like what we've been doing is just buying all the tickets and then telling all our friends, oh, we're going to do this. And so.
Right.
Yeah.
The ones I've been to, the website has an option for either.
Oh, okay.
And you can buy the whole room, but the minimum, it's a minimum price for the team. And that's what I just did. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're all that way.
Yeah. So some of them I've done, you buy the whole room. Some of them you can only buy tickets. So, yeah.
Cool.
Right. And I would say, I mean, that's the same, Russ, at Gen Con. True Dungeon.
True Dungeon is the same thing. Yeah.
Is kind of like the similar thing. That's sort of like a combination of escape rooms and the 5 wits experience.
Yeah, True Dungeon's not that
you've got
far
all
off
these
from an escape room. I mean, it's sort of similar.
No, because well, especially if you do the puzzle.
Yeah, right.
The puzzle option.
Yeah, I did.
Which is what we always.
I did True Dungeon last year. It was my
what'd you
first
think?
time going to Gen Con. I was actually a little disappointed because I've done so many escape rooms that are higher quality.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think that's fair. I think because the escape, I would say the difference is though the size. Most escape rooms aren't that many chambers, So I think what they've got
Right.
going on is more of a scale situation because they want it to feel like a dungeon.
Now, what was disappointing out of curiosity? Was it the quality of like the actual physical quality or the quality of the puzzles? Or?
Both. Like both
Yeah?
aren't
Huh?
as high quality as the good escape rooms that I've been to, and it was still fun, but it was more expensive too, I think.
Oh yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so-
It's yes, like double or
Yeah.
more than
So, like,
than I
was
would.
it
than I'm
40 or
used to
50 bucks a
spending on an
person
escape
now?
room now.
Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah, I think it's up.
But I'd agree.
yeah.
I think, Ambie, the advantage the escape rooms have is they're permanent. So like the
Yeah.
ones I've been to also are very, very thematic.
Mhm.
So they do, it does like the sets and the props are much higher, but they got to tear that whole thing down when they're done it.
Yeah.
So it does get limited.
Right.
Makes sense.
But back to what we were talking about when I brought it up. We've done it with all friends and we've done it with like 50-50, and it's just not the same when you
Yeah.
don't know everybody.
Yeah,
and it's because I mean you don't want to be, I don't know, it's just not as fun to me when you're like, I don't understand this puzzle, and the like four people around you are like, like, who are you?
Yeah. And
So-
you can yell at your friends more comfortably too. Like, go do this. You have to do this now.
So here's an interesting thing. So what did you guys, how important is the theme of the escape room to the experience? And I have a follow-up for this. I'm really curious about this. But what do you guys think of the overall, is the theme most important? Is it the puzzles? Is it how they bring them together?
I like how they bring them together, but I lean to more.
Yeah,
towards
I would
puzzles.
say, yeah. Yeah, I would say if the theme is well executed, I think that it's like an enhancement.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I would say it's more like if you were there and it was like this awesome, really cool looking thing, but the puzzles were all super easy,
Yeah.
and then you're not really getting your money's worth if you're out of there in 15 minutes. And so I would say it's like a combination of both, but it really, the quality really needs to be there first and foremost with the puzzles and the difficulty, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. Because if there's no difficulty in the puzzles, then you just get out really fast, and
Right.
it's like, oh, okay, that's it.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Well, the reason I was asking about the theme in particular, go ahead, Craig.
No, I was just gonna say like the one that I went to in the Portsmouth escape room where we went for Rafe's birthday was funny because you could tell they had a story.
Mhm.
And the woman was like, okay, so here's the story. And if you don't do it, this guy was kidnapped. And then she ended it there. And I was like, well, then what? And she's like, what do you mean? Well, they kidnapped him and they're demanding this thing and we have to find it in the room. What if we don't find it? Like, what are the stakes? And she's like, I don't know. I don't, are they going to kill him? I need to know what's going on. So it was like, they had thought about the basic story, but the drama was really lacking. I think. It was more fun. I mean, it wasn't like an actual lack. It was just funny because the poor girl had no idea what was going on. As I was like, oh my God, he's gonna die.
Well, the reason I'm asking,
That was all the energy I had for the whole day. Then.
well, the reason I was asking was because I was interested to know if either of you thought it was worth it to do escape rooms based on their physical location. So the reason I bring this up is there are escape rooms now in most major cities around the world.
Mhm.
And my family happened to be in Vienna last summer doing our vacation. And while we were there, it was an afternoon, it was rainy, and we decided to do the escape room. And I was like, why would we do an escape room in Vienna? You can do them anywhere. It's like, do you really want to, when you're in an exotic location like that, do you really want to, spend your time doing that? But I have to say, it was really cool because it was just very different from some of the other one I'd done. But also what's cool about it was themed based in the city. So you actually learned, like the way they did it, it was based on a lot of the history and background of Vienna. And so it kind of felt like it was kind of cool because you were learning more about the city that you wouldn't have even thought to check out, while you were there, kind of thing. So you weren't actually visiting like their physical spots, but you were kind of like, oh, this room, you're Mozart's from Vienna, right? So like there's this whole section about Mozart, and it's like was really neat. So do you guys find that when you do some of these, and you've been to a lot of them, but do you find that like Craig with like a Portsmouth one is notably different than the Boston one? Is this the kind of thing worth checking out when you're in different places?
I don't think.
I'll let Ambie answer that.
Well, for your example, I don't think it matters that it was in Vienna. Like someone could make the same thing somewhere else if they want someone to learn about Vienna. But there's a bunch of different companies and a bunch of different ones that of different qualities. So like, I guess sometimes the best ones are in a certain area. And if you're really into escape rooms, you could travel to do them. I'm not there yet. All of the ones I've done are in California, in San Francisco, and in Southern.
It's only a matter of time.
Right. So you're doing a bunch of local ones.
Yeah.
And are any of the ones you do generally themed based on local stuff? Or are they
I don't
all
think I've done any that are themed based on local things.
So there's not like even like a San Francisco theme.
No.
One in San Francisco or anything like that.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like there's no like Escape from Alcatraz escape room.
Oh, there is
like
an Escape from Alcatraz escape room that I have not done.
But it is. Is it in San Francisco or is it in the wrong spot?
It's in San Francisco, not in Alcatraz though.
Oh, right. Well, yeah, that'd be tricky, but that would be awesome.
Yes,
that would be awesome, but tricky.
Yeah.
They're missing a trick out there on Alcatraz Island, I think.
I think it's quite possible to find a good or a bad one wherever
Yeah.
you go. So
Yeah, well, I'm sure they can be good about it. I was just curious if they were like worth checking out based on their location, but it sounds like
I think
Well, I mean, like
more
there are the Five Wits company has like in almost every major city or near every major city has all kinds of different, like in every location has one or two, and they're almost all different themes.
Right.
I know the plan when they first opened them was to move them around, so every few years it changed. I don't know if that's still the plan, but the original one they had in Boston when it was at Fenway Park was a mummy's tomb raid.
Right.
And I know that one moved somewhere out west, and now we've got the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea one and the espionage one.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So, and speaking of cost, you do them both for $20.
That's pretty affordable.
So that's you can't beat that price.
But yeah, like Scrap or Real Escape Game also does that. They have a bunch of different locations and they have a bunch of different rooms that move around and rotate, I think. Yeah, I really like their games because they're thematic and they also have actors in them that you can interact with.
Oh, cool.
Oh, that's neat. So it's kind of like some of the crazy Haunted Mansion things and stuff where you can actually interact. That's
yeah,
neat.
but it's not scary.
Yeah, you're right. Well, let me ask you this about the interaction. So I thought this was kind of cool. So the one I did in Vienna had a neat mechanic where, and I don't know if all of them do this. I've only done two. So, but there was there was a timer, right? And you're trying to figure out the first room, and then there's a second room and a third room. In the room, there's a phone, and it's thematically with the room. And from time to time, the phone would ring. If you wanted to, you could answer it, and they would give you either a hint if you were stuck, right? Or they could also help you out if for some reason something was failing mechanically, like if something didn't work. Everything worked, but they said if like, but that actually helped us a lot because when we first got in there, this is the first one we'd ever done and we'd never done anything like this before. So we walked in and we didn't know what to, like, we were looking around, rationally for, this kind of goes back to the puzzle box thing, like for a clue that would make sense. And the first clue was like under, stuck to the bottom of the chair. So you had to tip the chairs over, but like, I wouldn't have thought to do that. Like that didn't make sense in the context of the clue, the problem you were solving. You know what I mean? So once we figured that out, then we were like, oh my God, like the number of lights on the ceiling matters. Like, like we just weren't there mentally. So they just called and he said like, it was a very monotone voice. And the guy was clearly to what you alluded to, Ambie, he was in character pretending to be like this random secret agent calling you or something. But I thought that was really cool that they had that help mechanic in there. So you didn't get frustrated. Do you guys like that? And do most of them do that sort of thing?
I think most of the ones I've been to offer hints. Yeah, some of them have like, oh, you can get 3 hints in a game or something, but they have different ways of doing it. Sometimes they have a button that you push if you want a hint. Or like there's a person in the room with you or you need to like call them or something. I don't know. But yeah, a lot of them do.
Yeah, the one in Portsmouth has a TV screen in one corner. And there's cameras so they can see you. And you can push a button if you want a hint. Although she was being very free with hints and we weren't asking for them. So that got a little frustrating.
Yeah, that happens to some.
But they can also They can also admonish you through the screen, which is funny because in the one in Portsmouth, you're not allowed to move the furniture at all.
Oh yeah.
And in the one in Manchester, you're allowed to move everything.
Right.
And one of our friends had just done the one in Manchester where you, like, as you're saying, Russ, you literally have to pick up the furniture and turn it over.
Right.
And he kept like moving to the chair and lifting it up. And then you'd hear, and on the screen, it would be, please stop moving the furniture.
Don't touch the furniture.
Like, okay, we got it. Okay, sorry.
No fish.
And then at one point, we were agonizing over this one part of the puzzle. Like, what do these 3 colors mean? What do they mean? And inadvertently, we had already solved that puzzle using other clues that we didn't know were going towards the same thing. So at one point, the screen just said, "You already have that information." Oh, so we don't. So it was like we're looking at. It's like, oh, it's going east, it's going west, it's going circle. And what it was, like that same information was available on these plane tickets that we had found and already like 10 minutes ago already found what was being pointed to with that. So that was kind of funny. So and then in the 5 wits, you actually have like a in the spy one, you have a spy master that's with you and directing your team, sort not really directing it, but sort of like helping your team. So you have an actor with you. And in the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, it starts out in this Jules Verne museum, and you have the museum curator who gets sucked into the adventure with you. So there's always somebody there who can kind of help if you're not kind of confused or lost. So I think that's key, mainly because I mean you're there to have fun, right? So and they're really good for the most part, in my experience, not so much in Portsmouth, but gauging how much help you want. Right? Like some people, I don't want any help. I want to figure it out. And then there's other people who are like, I'm here for the experience, man. Just tell me what
you're getting frustrated, then it's not good either, right?
Right, exactly. Nobody's going to have fun when they're right. Exactly. So it makes sense that there's that release valve there.
Right. So cool. So we're starting to run out of time, but I wanted to ask, Ambie, you've done so many of these, particularly like what really appeals about them to you? What gets you coming back? And do you think it's something that's a general gamer appeal, or is it just something that you like escape rooms, or you feel like it's actually something that most gamers would probably enjoy, because it sort of does similar things that games do?
I think a lot of gamers enjoy it, but I really enjoy them because I really like the puzzles, and I grew up doing similar things for our birthdays. When I was a kid, we would make clues that go to different places around the house for whoever's birthday it was, and then we'd hide them in the card and then hide them around the house, and so they had to go on a little clue hunt, and then at the end they'd get the present. So that was a lot of fun doing that. And then in college, we had Ditch Day, which instead of just ditching classes, the seniors created a whole day of elaborate puzzles and activities for the underclassmen to do that were themed, and then the underclassmen would spend all day doing it. So that was like a 8-hour escape room. And then after college, like escape rooms started popping up. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like Ditch Day. So I've always enjoyed this stuff.
Cool.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's very cool. I think that's really neat. That doesn't surprise me. Craig, what do you think appeals about them to you?
Well, I think the immersion is fun. And the same things that I've always thought were fun with True Dungeon. Like you're with a group of your friends and you're all working together, and you see like everybody's strength. Like when we were doing the Jules Verne one, I had no idea my wife could read music. And at one point we're in the library and we figure out, oh my God, you have to play the organ you need to play this music on the organ to get the door to unlock. And I was like, we're done. We're screwed. Nobody's going to be able to. And my wife's like, wait, and she plays so it's always, those moments are always neat. And I think there's an element of escapism to the escape room too, where you kind of leave everything at the door and you're wrapped up in this cool little world where the mysteries are, even if you can't figure it out, the answers are all there for you. So I think that's a really neat activity for groups of friends to do or families to do. And it's a neat, it's better than watching TV or, watching a movie sometimes or whatever.
I think you hit it on it for me, Craig. I think it's the same reason I enjoy video games and board games, because they they're problem solving, so that engages your brain. But you get so focused on the problem you're solving and the theme around the problem that you lose yourself in the problem, right? And you lose yourself in the world, and you just escapes. You escape the world, right? Like you said. So I think it's a great. I like it a lot. I think it's really cool, and it's also very, very social.
Yeah.
Which is also a lot of fun. And invariably crazy things happen, and you have these great stories to tell about to you and your friends. And it was great to do it when we did it with my teams at work. It was fantastic because it's just a great. I hate to call it a team building exercise because that's what we use, but it's really just a lot of fun way to break down the barriers between you and your coworkers, get to know them a little better. You're off the clock. You're not, you're not able to be your manager self or whatever. You're just having fun with your folks. So that's a lot of fun too. Right. So I would recommend that also.
Yeah.
So cool.
I know there's some in Boston that are actually more physical.
Yes,
and you find yourself actually climbing from one floor to the next in these in a full multi-level building environment, and so I'm eager to try those too, but I'm a little daunted at the.
Sounds like the kind of thing we sent our kids to when they were 8. Climbing room.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah,
so fun.
Awesome. Well, Ambie, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here on the D6G. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun to talk about escape rooms.
Our pleasure. If people would like to follow up on what you're doing or catch you on the internet or see what you're up to, where should they go?
I'm on a podcast called Boardgame Blitz. So you can find us at boardgameblitz.com. And we're also on Twitter and Instagram and other things at Boardgame Blitz. And for my personal stuff, my handle, like almost everywhere, is Ambie Rona. So I'm on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, other things.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Ambie. We look forward to hearing you more on Boardgame Blitz, of course. Thanks again for joining us.
A lot of fun having you on. This Jemmer Notice is brought to you by all of our friends at Patreon, the men and the women who have jumped on the big old D6G train and help it chugging along from one mediocre episode to the next. Without them, the entire internet would be a slight little bit less mediocre. Would that make it better or worse? I don't know. Anyway, today I would like to thank Dale Coons, Matt L., Jason L. Fernandez, Jason Ledoux, and Eric Lonebach. Eric, I do that to you every time. I know it. But anyway, I hope the intention is there. Do you ever notice how hard it is to realize whether or not your chosen force or side or faction is unbalanced sometimes? Whether it's a board game and you really like one particular faction because of its starting positions or its abilities, or it's a card game and your faction has certain card abilities or engines that it can make, or if it's a miniatures game where your force has specific rules that you think are really fluffy, but maybe they don't come across as fluffy. I'm realizing that it's very difficult sometimes to tell when your chosen faction may or may not be unbalanced, because when you get right down to it, we want our side to win, right? I mean, we're playing these games to win. You don't have to win, but it's nice to win. And so when everything works the way you think it's supposed to work, then, that's pretty cool. And it kind of works the way you think it's going to work in your head. So that's neat. And it's sort of, it's like confirmation bias, right? You have this confirmation in your head, or you have this bias in your head that this should work a certain way. So when you see it and it works, then you think, oh, well, then that's the way it's supposed to be. And it confirms what you're thinking, as opposed to making you think, maybe that's a little too much. My favorite example of this would be our friend Pete, who has always been, at his core, an Eldar player, all the way back in Rogue Trader days, when if there were Eldar on the table, you might as well not be playing otherwise, because you had Swooping Hawks that had that had vortex grenades in their little grenade packs, and they could just jump over your unit and actually literally erase it from the board. Or, all the best stuff and no negatives. And they're kind of a little bit like that now, a little bit, tiny little bit, if they're, being played by the right guy. But back then they were ridiculous. And Pete saw nothing wrong with that because, obviously, that's the way they were supposed to play. Eldar, there's not that many of them. They're a dying species, blah, blah, blah. But they're supposed to be really good at everything they do because they've been around longer than everybody else. Back then, that was the case. Now, of course, you've got your Necrons. But, so he thought that was fine. Now, if that wasn't built into the points value of the units that we were playing with, and back then, I don't even think there were point values. I can't remember. I have my Rogue Trader book around here somewhere, but actually I can see it from here, but I'm trapped in the corner of the pub, and I can't get out right now. But anyway, point being, hey, that's not your fault if the points system is out of whack. So, there you go. But the question is, though, when you're playing people and they're not having fun against your force, what do? And so that's kind of where I find myself now. So I have the Death Guard army, right? And I've spent hundreds of dollars on it and hundreds of hours painting the models. I like them. I like the way they look. They get a lot of compliments when they hit the table. And I know that, for instance, Russ hates the disgustingly resilient roll because it's just disgusting. Basically, every time any of my guys take any kind of wound from any source, even wounds that normally in the game just erase you and there's no help, I get a 5+ save, meaning I roll a die, and on a 5 or 6, I don't take that one wound. So it's pretty powerful. On a day when it works, on a day when those dice are hot, it's very hard to kill my guys. On the other hand, if you hit them with something big like a laser cannon, and you're doing D6 wounds, and I have to make D6 5+ saves, then that's going to erase a guy, not usually. But I get it. Especially having played Russ several times and seen the look on his face. When those dice are hot, it's very, very frustrating. And I've always said that building frustration into a game is not a way to make people have a lot of fun, right? And so I will say right now that I've played 4 games so far in 2018 with my Death Guard, and they are 50-50. They've won 2 games and they've lost 2 games. They got crushed in 1 game, and it was almost entirely due to the cards, the objective cards that the other team was pulling. They just happened to be pulling objectives that they were already sitting on or things that they could get a lot of points for, and then they rolled the dice, and if it's if a random 1, 2, or 3 victory points, they were usually getting the 2 or the 3. And then there was one that I crushed, and it was exactly the same thing, where I was just getting the exact cards that I need. Now, at the end of those games, if you look at the table, you can kind of see who won from what's left at the table and what the distribution is of the units and where they are and everything. But it doesn't really show the story of the scoreboard where, there's really obviously been a crushing victory. And I think that too can be frustrating for players of 40K, where it's not really about who dies and who lives, except in a minor way. If you kill their general, then you get a point. If they kill your general, then they get a point. If you're the first person to kill a unit, then you get a point, etc., etc. But for the most part, it's all about taking objectives or performing particular actions on the battlefield at a given time, where you pull the card and the card might say kill a psyker, kill a wizard kind of guy. And if you kill him, then you're going to get a point. If you don't have that card and you kill that guy because he's doing too much damage to your army, well, that's great. You're going to limit the damage being done to your army, but at the same time, you're not going to get that point. So it's all about those cards and the draws. And that's why a lot of people don't like them, because it's swingy. But everybody I play with loves them because it gives the game more of a story, and it's not just kill the other guy, unless you lose sight of what you're trying to do. So it can be frustrating, as I said, if you're fighting a force where I get one little save, an extra save every time. And that can be frustrating. But there's frustrations built. It's a war game, right? There are a lot of moving pieces. There are frustrations built into everything, and I think that's inherent in the game. There's a model that one of my friends was fielding that is ridiculously, in my opinion, powerful in hand-to-hand, and I mean, he kills anything he touches in the first round of combat. I don't think anything has ever survived first round of combat with this model. And he's a character, so you can't shoot him except in very limited circumstances if there's any models near him, and he's got a squad that kind of like, goes along with him. And that can be frustrating. So I think the danger comes in when you've got like two competing frustrations and a game that starts out with everybody, jolly and happy and smiling and making jokes. And then this one monster model is barreling him across the board and there's nothing I can do. And then at the same time, my piddly little guys are making they're not piddly. They're expensive points wise, but they're not these giant juggernaut characters, but they're making their 5+ saves. And so they're surviving, and so there's frustration on the other side because they can't kill all my guys, and there's frustration on my side because I can't even shoot at that guy, and then he hits my most expensive model and wipes it off the table in one round. So there's a lot of frustration, and I think ultimately you kind of have to accept that when you step up to the table. It's 40K at least, but I think almost every war game has some of that built into it, and I quite often will get frustrated, and I admit it, and I have to rein that in because I know there's no $1 million prize on the line as much as everybody likes winning. You're not gonna. I don't play in competitive games anymore, so there's really nothing at stake other than bragging rights, and so I've got to keep that in mind. And B, the ultimate reason I'm stepping up to that table is to have fun, and if I'm not having fun, I have to step away, and so I feel like this 5+ save that my guys have been getting, like I said, I mean, there are games where I don't make a single one. And it's funny because there are some objectives that I can pull from my deck where I get victory points for making them. So I know that several times I've had that card and I've never gotten any victory points off it because I can't make a single save. But I also know that it's very frustrating when you need that one guy to die and you shoot him with everything and you hit with some and you wound with a few, and I make most of my armor saves, but I miss that one armor save, but then I roll the 5+ and I make the 5+, and so you didn't kill the guy after all. It's that built in. Now I would say drama, right? To me, that's, hey, high drama, my guy survived. But on the other side of the table, that's frustration. Right. And so I think ultimately where I'm coming from is you need to keep that in mind. Both players need to keep that in mind, that it's a game, that you're playing to have fun, and that sometimes it's going to be frustrating. Sometimes there's going to be like that rule. And I get that rule is designed for frustration because I get that roll every time one of my guys takes a wound. And so on a night where I'm hot with those dice rolls, that's going to be a constant building frustration. And it can be argued whether or not, I mean, my guys cost more than the other guys, right? So it can be argued whether or not the point values are valid. Maybe they should be a few points more. I don't know. I don't know ultimately because math, but the key is that element of frustration that is no fun. It's no fun. And so, I don't know. I'm at a point now where I'm like, I think I might put up my 40K army for a little while, or maybe pull out a different 40K army that's not frustrating for other people. Maybe I'll bring up my guard army that's got like 100 models, but every one of them can't hit the broadside of the barn, and none of them get an armor save 90% of the time. So maybe that would be more fun. I don't know. So, so that's where I am right now. And I think mainly I came from this from a point of view of, I remember Pete and how excited he was whenever Zeldar crushed everybody else because you just couldn't stop him because he was just so cool. And he was like, well, that's the fluff. And I don't, you don't want to be that guy as much as I love Pete, but you don't want to, you're playing the game to have fun, and that means both sides have to have fun. And that's, I think, where I am at the moment. And so I don't know if that means change up the makeup of my army. I mean, I have a lot of Death Guard. I can change, I can bring a whole bunch of different stuff to the table, or just a totally different army. But I don't know. Ultimately, the question is, how do you tell when when your side is cheat? Like, I look at my armies and I see weakness, and that's just me because I kind of a pessimist that way. So I see all the different ways that my guys can die really easily and all the different things that they're not good at. And I think that's kind of like inherent in human nature to a certain extent. And the other guy's seeing the weaknesses in his army, but he's only seeing the strengths in my army and whatnot. But on a night when all those die rolls go the way they need to go, I understand that frustration. It's just a question of how to deal with it. Whether I, like I said, go with a totally different army, different makeup. I don't know. I'll let you guys know what I'm thinking. But right now I'm thinking maybe I'm going to play Rune Wars this week. That's all I've got to say about that. So thanks for listening and good night.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@the d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA discussions forum on DACA.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
The theme from Total Fangirl comes from the soundtrack of The Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, courtesy of Flying Frog Productions, and is a composition of Mary Beth Magalanes.
Have you played Wizards Wanted? Are you familiar with that
Wizards Wanted, no.
one? Oh, it's really good.
Is that?
I got to lure Craig to the table with this one. I think he'll like it. That one's really good.
Yeah.
Let's see what else I've been playing lately. We've already reviewed Bunny Kingdoms, but that game's fantastic. I can't talk enough about Bunny Kingdoms. That game is so good.
No, he can't talk enough about Bunny Kingdoms.
I don't know that one either.
From his point of view.
Bunny Kingdoms is fantastic, Craig. Don't be fooled. Let's see what else.
Yes.
Well, let us know.
One out of one podcast host says Bunny Kingdoms is great.
It's a solid choice.